You practice immortality. I cultivate the land. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. Tanaka shines like jade. Linyang Market. It was just dawn, and the fog had not yet dissipated. The entire market was shrouded in a layer of hazy white air as thin as a veil. A small courtyard surrounded by a blue-grey stone wall. The courtyard is about 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. Most of the area is grey-black soil, leaving only a narrow bluestone path in the middle. In the grey-black soil, some low-grade spiritual plants are planted. Under the silent nourishment of the fog all night, the spiritual plants are full of vitality, lazily stretching their tender green branches and leaves. With a creak, a stone house at the end of the bluestone path opened, and a young man walked out. The boy was 16 or 17 years old, wearing a grey shirt, tall and slender, handsome, and his eyes were smart and clear. It was Xuan, who had traveled here for quite some time. He was originally an ordinary young man on Earth. He never thought that after waking up, he inexplicably occupied the body of this young man and became an insignificant spiritual plant master among the countless beings in the cultivation world. After the initial confusion and fear, Xuan gradually adapted to his new identity. He started out as a standard person, without a father or mother, alone, with ordinary qualifications and the cultivation level of the second level of key training. With years of accumulation, he rented a piece of spiritual field in the market, planted spiritual herbs and medicinal herbs, and tried to survive in this world of cultivation where the strong prey on the weak and dangers are everywhere. The thin mist blowing in the yard made Xuan, who had just woken up, suddenly sober up a lot. He surrounded the spiritual plants and observed them carefully. There were 20 to 30 spiritual plants, each with a certain gap between them. They were about 1 foot high, with slender leaves and a little light white fluorescence on them, like stars dotting them in the white mist. These were Lingying grass, a first level spiritual plant with a relatively low planting difficulty. After maturity, they could be used as materials for refining several kinds of healing pills, and were widely used in the cultivation world. In addition to Lingying grass, there were 2 trees in the yard. One was the eclipse moon tree, and the other was also the eclipse moon tree. The eclipse moon tree is a first level spiritual plant. Under Xuan's careful care, it has grown well, and is taller than his head. Among the green leaves, dozens of silver white hawk-like fruits are looming. These fruits are called eclipse moon fruits. When they are just formed, they look like crescents. Slowly, the crescents gradually grow larger and become a full moon when they mature. Mature eclipse moon fruits can be taken directly, which can slightly increase the spiritual energy in the bodies of low-level cultivators who practice Qi. They can also be used to refine precious elixirs such as PO and pills. The difficulty of planting and the rarity of the eclipse moon tree are slightly higher than the firefly grass, and Xuan has spent the most time on it. Both spiritual plants are growing quite well, but Xuan's face shows a trace of worry. He quickly came to the west side of the yard, squatted down, pinched the leaves of a firefly grass near the stone wall with 2 fingers, and carefully turned the back over. As expected, there were strands of light black lines on the back of the leaves. If Xuan hadn't been careful, the black lines as thin as hair would have been extremely difficult to detect. Compared to yesterday, the number of black lines is obviously a bit more. Xuan secretly compared in his heart. Looking at the firefly grass eroded by the lines, he couldn't help but sigh. When he was taking care of the spiritual plants 2 days ago, he accidentally found that a firefly grass near the stone wall was in a state of some abnormality. After searching for a long time, he finally found these black lines on the back of the leaves. The lines seemed to be integrated with the firefly grass, tightly adhered together, and extremely difficult to separate. Xuan was just a low-level spiritual plant master, with an ordinary background and poor relevant knowledge. He didn't know where these black lines came from. There was no way to prescribe the right medicine. In desperation, he had to use the spiritual energy in his body to carefully separate the black lines from the back of the leaves. He exhausted his spiritual energy and mind to barely clean it up, but when he observed it again the next day, the black lines suddenly appeared again, and the number was increasing day by day. According to this trend, In a day or two, this firefly grass will be occupied by black lines, and it is very likely to spread to the nearby fireflies. Thinking of this, Xuan was worried and stood there in a daze. He considered pulling out this Lingyian grass to prevent the Lingyian grass around it from being stained with black lines. But after a brief consideration, he gave up the idea. After all, the black lines were of unknown origin, and Xuan was not sure how they eroded the Lingyian grass. It would be fine if it was effective after pulling it out, but if other Lingyian grasses could not avoid being eroded after pulling it out, it would be a waste of time. For now, I have to go to the market to find an orthodox and experienced spiritual plant master to help me solve the problem. These are some spiritual stones that I have saved up with great difficulty. I originally planned to pay the rent for the spiritual field in 2 months. Xuan was only a casual cultivator at the second level of key training, and he could not completely own a spiritual field that belonged to him. This small spiritual field in the yard was rented by him from a cultivator at the middle level of key training in the market, and he had to pay a lot of spiritual stones every month. For the next period of time, I can only tighten my belt to live. He stood up with a resolute look. After the spiritual plants mature, they can be sold to shops and monks in the market. In addition to the rent and the spiritual stones needed for daily cultivation, there will be some left. But if you use it to ask for help from senior spiritual plant masters, you will have to bleed a lot. Xuan made a decision in his heart and looked around. The blue-gray stone wall is surrounded by a circle of black thorns, with dense and sharp black thorns, which plays a certain protective role. However, the defensive ability is better than nothing. It can only protect against gentlemen, not villains, not to mention those strange insects and beasts who are secretive and covet spiritual plants. After dealing with this matter, it is necessary to save some spiritual stones and get a protective formation to prevent similar incidents from happening again. It is completely unrealistic to rely on this straw puppet to guard the spiritual field. Xuan looked at a straw puppet in the corner of the yard. The puppet was about 3 feet tall, leaning against the wall of the yard. Its body was made of unknown hay, with a large head and a small body. On its large and somewhat deformed head, there was a tumor made of grey hay. This straw puppet was a second-hand item that Xuan bought from a stall in the market. According to the stall owner, the puppet came from the Qianji sect of the cultivation world, had a simple behavior pattern, and was often used to guard some lower-grade spiritual fields. If it sensed that a cultivator or a monster had entered the range of the spiritual field, the straw puppet would issue a warning to the owner of the spiritual field. If it found that the other party had a tendency to harm the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, the straw puppet would actively attack and trap the other party. However, this one in the yard might be a second-hand item, so the warning function was sometimes effective and sometimes not. As for the active attack, there was no need to think about it. Of course, it also had a lot to do with Xuan himself. Since he crossed over, he basically stayed indoors and had little communication with the outside world, so there were no cultivators or monsters entering the yard. Xuan glared at the grass puppet with a tumor on its head with a look of regret. The spiritual energy in his body surged, and a thread of spiritual rain appeared above the firefly grass and the eclipse moon tree, falling on the branches and leaves, and seeping into them. Nourished by the spiritual rain, the spiritual plants in the spiritual field looked even greener and cleaner, and the dust-free branches and leaves swayed gently, showing their charm. This is the spiritual rain technique that every spiritual plant master must learn. It can blend the subtle spiritual energy into the water vapor and nourish the spiritual plants to ensure that they can grow smoothly. This firefly grass has entered the mature stage. After Xuan irrigated each spiritual plant, he found that on a firefly grass, dots of fluorescence kept flashing, as if they were about to fall off the leaves. He hurried back to the house, took out a white jade box, carefully picked the firefly grass, and put it in the jade box. The jade box can slow down the loss of spiritual energy in the spiritual plant, and can guarantee its medicinal effect to a certain extent. What is this? Xuan closed the jade box and was about to leave when he suddenly found a fist-sized white light ball left where the firefly grass was planted. The light ball flickered slightly and bits of spiritual light spread out. Xuan curiously reached out and gently touched the white light ball. In an instant, countless light points on the light ball poured into his palm, and an idea flashed through his mind involuntarily. Harvest a plant of firefly grass and gain 3 months of cultivation. The seedlings need everyone to cultivate together. You read and I will update. Chapter 2 Pests. As the thought flashed through his mind, Xuan felt something strange coming from his body. The originally calm and peaceful spiritual power suddenly surged, rushing back and forth between Xuan's tendons and veins. Half a moment later, the uncontrolled spiritual power gradually calmed down. Xuan carefully felt the changes in his body and couldn't help showing a hint of joy on his face. His cultivation level increased a lot, which was equivalent to 3 months of hard practice in normal days, and he was only a stone's throw away from breaking through to the 3rd level of key training. After traveling through time for so long, the golden finger has finally arrived. Xuan was overjoyed. In his previous life, both his mind and body were just average, and the qualifications and background of this body he occupied were also ordinary. If there were no plugins, he didn't know how he could survive in the cultivation world. A piece of information emerged in his mind, and he understood everything about this white light ball. All the spiritual plants and herbs that he planted and cultivated with his own hands will be rewarded with a white light ball after they mature and are collected. From the white light ball, various things such as cultivation, magic tools, exercises, and elixirs can be opened. The richness of the reward depends on many factors, such as your participation in the growth of the spiritual plant, the type and grade of the spiritual plant, the appearance when mature, etc., which will affect the size of the white light ball reward. The light ball can only be seen and touched by yourself, and cannot be seen by outsiders. If you pick a spiritual plant that you did not plant yourself, you will not get the light ball reward. In other words, as long as I successfully plant a spiritual plant, in addition to the spiritual plant itself, I can also get an additional light ball reward. Isn't that double the harvest and double the happiness? Xuan looked at the spiritual firefly grass and eclipse moon tree growing vigorously in the soil, as if he saw white light balls flashing towards him. I, Xuan, can achieve what I have today because I have been practicing hard and taking care of the spiritual plants. Xuan couldn't help thinking. He felt that, since the appearance of the white light ball, many spiritual plants in the spiritual field have also undergone inexplicable changes. Xuan's mind was filled with blessing, and he focused his mind on a spiritual firefly grass under his feet. A barely visible progress bar appeared above the firefly grass. The progress bar was almost full, indicating that the firefly grass in front of him was about to enter the fully mature stage. A piece of information flashed through Xuan's mind. It has just been nourished by the spiritual rain, and I'm satisfied, but the roots of the neighbor next to it are too big and too long, so it is a bit squeezed. What is this? The real-time status of the spiritual plant. Xuan was puzzled and focused his mind on a firefly grass next to him. The progress bar was also more than half full, and the same information flashed through his mind. The firefly grass next to it was growing quite well, but it also felt that the roots of the neighbor were too long and too big, occupying its growth space. There is no way. The spiritual field is so big, I can only force you to add roots to the roots. Xuan sighed. Whether it is the growth progress bar or the real-time status, it is of great help to him. It allows him to grasp the growth needs of the spiritual plant and adjust the details to make it mature faster and better. Looking at the progress bar that is about to reach the top, he can't wait to use the spiritual rain technique to ripen the firefly grass. But he also knew that too much is as bad as too little. Proper nourishment is extremely beneficial to spiritual plants, but if it is moisturized frequently, it is equivalent to forcing the growth of seedlings. Even if it is mature, if the appearance is not good, it will affect the reward of the white light ball. Thinking of this, Xuan's idea of ripening the firefly grass and getting the light ball reward immediately dissipated. When he was about to go back to the house, he thought of something and turned to the west side of the yard. Since the real-time status of spiritual plants can be known, will the firefly grass eroded by the black thread also reveal the truth? He held his breath and concentrated his mind on the firefly grass tightly wrapped by the black thread. The progress bar is not much different from the previous two plants, and it is also about to be filled. A piece of information flooded into Xuan's mind. The firefly grass eroded by the black budworm larvae is in a worrying state. If it is not treated in time, the life in the body will be completely sucked away by the black budworm and become dead grass. Black budworm larvae. Lu Xuan muttered to himself, and his heart was relieved a little. It would be much easier to deal with it if we knew the origin of the black line. At least we wouldn't be like a headless fly with no direction to solve the problem. He felt that the name sounded familiar, so he hurried back to the house and took out a thick book. Common harmful insects and their solutions. It recorded hundreds of common insects that may harm spiritual plants during the cultivation of spiritual medicines, as well as the treatment suggestions left by the author of the book. Lu Xuan flipped through the pages and soon found detailed information about the black budworm. Black budworms. The adult is as thick as a little finger, come and go like the wind, and love to devour the branches and leaves of spiritual plants. When laying eggs, they will stay on the spiritual plants. After the eggs hatch, the larvae grow by absorbing the vitality of the spiritual plants. When the vitality of the spiritual plants is exhausted, they will automatically leave and look for the next target. Solution. The adult insects need to be handled safely by cultivators, who are at the 3rd level of key training, and are good at attacking spells. Unless the spiritual awareness is sharp, it is extremely difficult for low-level key training cultivators to detect the eggs and larvae. Because the larvae are too small and connected to the spiritual plants, it is easy to affect and harm the spiritual plants when handling them. Therefore, it requires a deep attainment in certain specific spells and subtle control to solve them. Lu Xuan closed the book and closed his eyes in thought. To avoid harming the spiritual plants that are eroded by the larvae, the spells used must meet 2 conditions. One is that there must be enough lethality, and the other is that the damage range can be controlled. Because of his humble background and his cultivation level of only the 2nd level of key training, he currently only mastered 2 low-level spells. One is the Spirit Rain technique, which is mainly used to cultivate spiritual plants, and the other is the Fireball technique, which is also used for self-defense. However, he knows these 2 spells, but is not proficient in them, and he cannot control them precisely. Moreover, the 2 spells do not look like specific spells to clean up the black budworm larvae. In the early stage of the Spirit Rain technique, it can only nourish the spiritual plants. Lu Xuan estimated that after 1 spell, the black budworm larvae would not only be unharmed, but even more excited. As for the Fireball technique, although it can kill enough, 1 fireball will end up with both the spirit firefly grass and the black budworm larvae perishing together. It seems that I still have to go to the market to seek help and spend money to avoid disaster. Fortunately, I can find the right medicine for the disease. Any savings is a good thing. Lu Xuan touched the slightly shriveled cloth bag on his waist and sighed faintly. Brother Lu, are you home? A loud voice came from outside the yard amid the knocks on the door. Then, a grey-black straw rope swam over from the corner of the yard and gently tapped Lu Xuan's knee. It was the straw puppet in the yard that sensed that someone was about to invade the spiritual field and warned Lu Xuan. People have been outside the door for a while and greeted you, so you warned them. If you really had any bad intentions, you might not even react when your house was robbed. Lu Xuan looked at the grey-black straw rope that was retracted and couldn't help but hold his forehead. The voice sounded familiar. It was one of the few cultivators that Lu Xuan knew after traveling through time. I'm here, Brother Zhang. He responded, came to the gate of the courtyard, and opened the door. A tall and honest cultivator walked in. The visitor was named Zhang Hong, with a 3rd level key training level. He lived next door to Lu Xuan. He had a Taoist partner who was at the 2nd level of key training, and raised a child of 6 or 7 years old. When Lu Xuan first came here, he gave him a lot of advice, which helped him avoid many wrong paths. Brother Zhang, please come in and have a cup of hot tea. Lu Xuan took Zhang Hong to the house. Zhang Hong turned his head and looked at the well-growing firefly grass and eclipse moon tree on both sides of the bluestone path, and nodded. Little brother Lu, you have taken good care of these 2 spiritual plants. It looks like there will be a good harvest in a while. It's just so, not comparable to the spiritual plants in your spiritual field at home, Brother Zhang. After Zhang Hong sat down, Lu Xuan made him a cup of hot tea. 2 or 3 tender green tea leaves floated in the tea bowl, swelling endlessly. Zhang Hong didn't care. He knew Lu Xuan's cultivation and family background. It was quite polite to have a cup of tea with spiritual tea. It's worthy of being Kingayu tea. Drinking it is, as if there is a drizzle moistening the heart. Only here with you, little brother Lu, can you have the opportunity to drink such a good cup of tea. At home, your sister-in-law doesn't allow anything. It's boring. Zhang Han carefully recalled the effect of the spiritual tea, closed his eyes and shook his head. Thinking of the frustration at home, he couldn't help but pat his thigh. There's no other way. Sister-in-law has to prepare for Xuan's future, so she can only be more careful. That's true. Zhang Han sighed. Sometimes, I envy you, little brother Lu, who is alone and has no pressure to support her family. Live the way you want, without arguing about trivial matters, worrying about whether the child can grow up healthily, or considering what kind of skills he can practice, or what sect he can enter in the future. How free. If brother Zhang really became like me, he would probably think about how happy it would be to have a wife, children and a warm bed. Lu Xuan said with a smile. You, kid, are so young, but you know so much. Zhang Han just sighed casually, laughed, and changed the subject. I came to you this time because I want to tell you something. I learned from other channels that the Wang family, a big family in the market, accidentally obtained information about a secret realm, but the secret realm is far away in the wilderness. Therefore, after a while, they will recruit hundreds or thousands of cultivators above the second level of key training to go and develop the secret realm. See if you have any ideas. If so, you can make preparations early. Develop the secret realm. Lu Xuan pondered and fell into deep thought. I will go and take a look this time. The emergence of a new secret realm has a big risk, but the benefits are proportional to the risk. If you stay in the market and plant spiritual plants all the time, it will be difficult to maintain the normal expenses of the family. As for you, little brother Lu, I personally suggest that you go and take a look. After all, there are Wang family foundation building cultivators rushing to the front. It is difficult for us to encounter those powerful monsters and spirits with our strength. The most important thing is that you are still young, little brother Lu. Although being a spiritual plant master is stable, the resources you can obtain are limited, and your strength improves slowly. If you plant spiritual plants for a long time, your spirit will be slowly worn away, and it is rare to have a sharp edge. Zhang Han looked at Lu Xuan, who was thinking with his head down, and suggested. Lu Xuan nodded gently. Indeed, what Zhang Han said made sense. Although there were certain risks in opening up secret realms, it was still within the controllable range. Moreover, the emergence of new secret realms often meant huge benefits. Even if you get a bite of leftovers, it will take a long time to fully digest them. If it was before, he might have a slight possibility of agreeing. But now, with the appearance of the white light ball, this slight possibility has disappeared. The reason for taking risks is nothing more than to obtain cultivation resources, and then come back to exchange them for elixirs, skills, magic tools, etc. But all of these can be obtained by staying at home and planting spiritual plants. Higher safety, greater returns. Farming is so delicious. He pretended to think for a while. His expression was tangled, and finally raised his head and said to Zhang Han with an apologetic look. Brother Zhang's kindness, I Lu Xuan appreciate it, but I have always been cautious and afraid of things, plus my cultivation is low, and I don't have any good magic methods. I'm afraid it's easy to go out and never come back. So, I just want to stay at home, guard this small piece of spiritual field, and plant spiritual plants quietly. As for the future, let's wait and see. Zhang Han saw that Lu Xuan had made up his mind, and couldn't help saying, your idea is not wrong. Although the risk of reclaiming the secret realm is not big, it does not mean that there is no risk at all. If we miss a little bit, it may cost several lives for us young cultivators. But I have to go and give it a try. Xuan can't practice a wild technique like me. The two were silent for a while. Zhang Han sat for a while, then stood up and said goodbye, and asked Lu Xuan to take good care of his little kid. Lu Xuan nodded in agreement, watched Zhang Han leave, and closed the gate of the yard. With the appearance of the white light ball, we should try our best to avoid putting ourselves in danger in the future. If you are not 90% sure. No, 90% sure is equivalent to 0 sure. If you are not 100% sure, don't go out and take risks casually. Lu Xuan looked at the Lingyian grass and eclipse moon fruit beside the bluestone path, feeling full of energy. Chapter 3 Frost Armor. After Zhang Hang left, Lu Xuan did not delay and took all his belongings with him, ready to go out to find a solution to the black budworm larvae. Before leaving, he took out a small stone the size of a fingernail and came to the grass puppet. The small stone was pure white, with a faint spiritual power fluctuation. It was a small piece of broken spirit, which was split from a low-grade spiritual stone. It was widely used by low-level cultivators like Lu Xuan. After you have eaten and drunk enough, take good care of the house for me. He stuffed the small piece of broken spirit into the grey grass tumor on the head of the grass puppet, and said earnestly, with the spiritual power supplement of the broken spirit, the grass puppet exuded a very weak spiritual light all over its body, as if it was more motivated. Although he was not very confident about this slow-reacting housekeeping puppet, Lu Xuan had no other choice but to hope that the spiritual plants in the yard would be safe during his absence. After going out, Lu Xuan walked quickly on the Bluestone Road. The courtyard where he lived was located in the northern area of Linyang Market. Most of the people there were low-level cultivators like him who were practicing Qi. They were crowded in a small area with the dream of breaking through themselves and changing their fate. As for the center of the market, it was the private land of those big families and big forces. Lu Xuan rarely went there on weekdays. He hadn't been out for a while, so he was a little uncomfortable. Looking at everything in front of him, he felt familiar and strange. A dark yellow paper bird about half a meter long carried a cultivator and floated slowly from low altitude. There were thorns of different lengths on the bird's body, which showed that it had been used for a long time. Then, a multi-legged mechanical beast flew over Lu Xuan's head, and he could see 20 to 30 cultivators sitting on it. Multi-legged mechanical beasts were a common means of transportation in the market. It only took dozens of broken spirits to get to the center of the market in a short time. There was no forbidden air formation outside the market. There were many spirit beasts and flying magic tools like this. Occasionally, a sword light would pass by quickly in the higher sky. The sword light was formed by a cultivator controlling a flying sword, which meant that he was at least a high-level cultivator of Qi training, which was an existence that was out of reach for him at the moment. Lu Xuan couldn't help but reveal a trace of envy. Riding the sword of King Ming and traversing the world was a distant dream for him in both his previous life and this life. He collected his mind and quickened his pace. After a while, he came to a gathering place for cultivators in the northern district. There were many shops and stalls in the gathering place. Although they were not as good as the central area in all aspects, they were more than enough for a low-level cultivator like him who practiced Qi training. Lu Xuan shuttled through the crowd and soon found a middle-aged cultivator in a corner. The middle-aged cultivator was also a second-level cultivator of Qi training. He was thin and had no flesh on his face, which made his cheekbones protrude high. He had a pair of mustaches on his upper lip, and his eyes were rolling around, quickly scanning the cultivators coming and going. Lu Xuan knew that his surname was Xuan, and that he lived not far from his yard. He had been hanging around in the gathering place for a long time, and was well aware of all the gossips in the North District. However, if he wanted to ask him something, he would have to pay a certain amount of money. Sensing Lu Xuan's gaze, the middle-aged Huang's mustache slightly curled up, forced a smile, and greeted Lu Xuan. "Little Daoist Lu, long time no see. I wonder if there is anything I can help you with." Lu Xuan smiled back. "There is indeed something I need to ask you, Senior Brother Huang. I heard that Senior Brother has a wide network of contacts and is familiar with cultivators at all stages of cultivation in the North District. Can you introduce a few to me? There are a few requirements. First, they must be cultivators at the 4th level of Qi training. Second, they must be proficient in powerful and finely controlled spells or similar magic tools. Finally, they must be within the North District and can be found immediately." Lu Xuan said to the middle-aged cultivator surnamed Xuan, while handing him a handful of broken spirits. He did not expect to find a cultivator with higher cultivation. Although it might be faster to deal with the black budworm larvae, the reward for hiring a 5th level Qi training cultivator was more than double that of a 4th level Qi training cultivator. In addition, the firefly grass had been severely eroded. If it could not be dealt with in time, he would lose not only one or more firefly grasses, but also the white light balls with unknown rewards when the firefly grass matured. Therefore, Xuan, who had always been thrifty, reluctantly paid so many broken spirits, and asked for a 4th level key training cultivator to be found immediately. All this was to be able to deal with the black budworm larvae as soon as possible. The middle-aged cultivator took the broken spirits handed over by Xuan, and his smile was obviously warm and natural. There are quite a few cultivators at the 4th level of key training in the North District, but there are not many who can meet the other conditions of little Daoist Lu. As far as I know, there are 3 nearby. One is Fairy Lingayan, who has a very high level of cultivation. She has a set of red cloud needle magic tools, which she uses to perfection, and at the same time, meets the 2 requirements of strong lethality and fine control. In addition, there is fellow Daoist Kinming, who has profound attainments in ice-based magic. His lethality may be slightly lacking, but his control is second to none. Finally, there is fellow Daoist Lizu, who is obsessed with swordsmanship and has the ability to turn sword energy into silk, and he also meets the requirements of little Daoist Lu. He told Xuan the addresses of the 3 4th level key training cultivators, and when he nodded to indicate that he had remembered them, he said with a smile, "Why don't I accompany little Daoist Lu and take you to visit these 3 fellow Taoists? I appreciate senior brother Huang's kindness, and I won't trouble you separately." Xuan knew that there was another price, so he clasped his fists to thank him, and turned to leave. He was not worried that the middle-aged monk would deceive him. After all, this was his livelihood, and he could not destroy his own rice bowl. In the yard, on the back of the firefly grass eroded by the black fine lines, a thin layer of frost spread rapidly with a bone-chilling cold. The black budworm larvae sensed the rapid approach of the biting cold, and the thin lines twisted to break free from the leaves. But the speed of breaking free could not keep up with the speed of the frost spreading, and the black fine lines were frozen by the thin frost. The snowflake-like frost solidified instantly and became hard. With a snap, a shallow layer of ice flakes broke apart and fell together with the black budworm larvae. A white and tender palm stretched out and caught all the broken ice flakes. Wow, Brotherkin is really as his name suggests. He uses the frost armor technique to perfection. I admire him. Xuan looked at the firefly grass leaves that were not damaged at all under the frost and exclaimed half truthfully. The owner of the white and tender palm was a fat monk, who smiled and stuffed the broken ice into his arms. Fortunately, I have fulfilled my mission. While dealing with the black budworm larvae, I did not freeze the leaves of the spiritual plant. I observed a nearby firefly grass for you, and found no traces of black budworm larvae. You can rest assured for the next period of time. But I looked around the yard, and the protection of your small spiritual field is a bit weak. It may be affected by similar incidents in the future. The fat monk reminded Xuan. Xuan waved his hand. We'll talk about the future later. The reward this time is 6 spirit stones and 50 broken spirits, as agreed before. The value of a spiritual firefly grass is far less than 6 spirit stones. The reason why the reward is so high is mainly to solve the pest problem in the spiritual field, and also because Kinming is a mid-level key training cultivator. The fat monk showed a harmless smile on his face. Xuan took out 50 broken spirits, counted them twice, and then took out 6 spirit stones from his waist one by one, turned his head, and handed them to the fat monk. "Thank you, fellow Daoist Lu." The fat monk Kinming took the spirit stones and left the courtyard. Xuan felt the spirit stones getting farther and farther away from him, and he felt heartbroken and couldn't help but spit inwardly. Swindler. Chapter 4, Zhengjin Sword Technique. After learning the information of the 3 4th level key training monks from the Huang monk, Xuan took the time to visit them one by one, and finally chose Kinming, who was good at ice magic. There was no other reason, just cheap. Among the 3, the Lingayan fairy asked for the highest price, and asked for 10 spirit stones at the first opening, which scared Xuan away directly. The second was Lizu, who was good at sword energy silk, asking for 9 spirit stones. The cheapest was Kinming, who only needed 7 spirit stones. Xuan naturally did not hesitate and chose Kinming at the first time. On the way, He worked hard to cut Kinming's reward by 50 broken spirits, saving half a spirit stone. But this cheapness is only relative to the other 2 monks. You know, Lu Xuan rented this yard with a spiritual field, and the monthly rent was 5 spirit stones. So in just a short time, he spent more than a month's expenses, which made Lu Xuan heartbroken. Fortunately, the problem of black budworm larvae was successfully solved. I just hope that the white light group of the spirit firefly grass that has returned to normal can bring a lot of rewards. He focused his mind on the firefly grass that was eroded by the black line, and a thought flashed through his mind. I suddenly shivered, and I felt so empty, as if something had disappeared from my body, and I urgently needed to replenish my nutrition. What kind of state is this? Lu Xuan complained, and the spiritual energy in his body surged. Strands of spiritual rain fell on the green leaves of the firefly grass, and seeped into it. After 3 consecutive spiritual rain spells, the firefly grass that had lost vitality was mostly restored. Lu Xuan took the opportunity to inspect the small courtyard and learned about the current status of the remaining firefly grass and the 2 eclipse moon trees. After confirming that there was no problem, he felt relieved to enter the house. The next day, early in the morning, Lu Xuan had no time to wash up and hurried to the firefly grass, pinched the leaves, and turned over the back. The black thin line that had been haunting him for the past few days finally stopped appearing. He let out a long sigh, and a smile appeared on his face involuntarily. After a round of spiritual rain spells, Lu Xuan carefully looked at the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, and found that the progress bars under 3 more firefly grasses were completely full. He concentrated his mind on it. 2 ordinary quality firefly grasses. Good quality firefly grasses. HMM. Good quality firefly grasses. Lu Xuan noticed the subtle differences between the 3 firefly grasses. This farming cheat only appeared after he harvested the first firefly grass, so he didn't know the quality of the first firefly grass when it matured. He carefully picked the firefly grass that was full of faint fluorescence, and 3 white light balls quietly appeared on the spot, flickering slightly, as if attracting Lu Xuan to pick it up. Harvest 1 firefly grass, gain 3 months of cultivation. Harvest 1 firefly grass, gain 3 months of cultivation. Harvest 1 firefly grass, gain the magic of earth attraction. The moment he picked up the light ball, Lu Xuan felt the spiritual energy in his body surge instantly. The crazy influx of spiritual power raged through the meridians, and when it calmed down, Lu Xuan felt that his cultivation had naturally broken through to the 3rd level of key training. After many days of hard training, with the help of the 3 white light balls, he finally succeeded in breaking through to the 3rd level of key training. Lu Xuan thought with relief. As his spiritual power surged, a spell called Earth Attraction also appeared in his sea of consciousness. He understood clearly and learned a lot of information about Earth Attraction. Earth Attraction is similar to Spirit Rain and is one of the several low-level spells that spiritual plant masters must have. After successful practice, it can induce and control the structural changes of the soil, and can also change the concentration of spiritual power in the soil, so that spiritual plants can grow better. For Lu Xuan now, it is quite practical. He activated the spell, and the grey-black soil in the spiritual field was slightly raised under the control of his spiritual power, and the position of the rhizomes of the remaining spiritual fireflies was slightly changed in subtle places, making their distribution more reasonable, no longer either a large empty space or crowded together. I originally thought that all the white light balls brought by the firefly grass would be 3-month cultivation. Now it seems that the same species of spiritual plants will also give different light ball rewards. That good quality mature firefly grass brought the art of earth attraction. It seems that the remaining 20 or so firefly grasses and the 2 eclipse moon trees need to be taken care of more carefully. Improving their quality when mature is to improve the reward of white light balls. Lu Xuan thought to himself. The yard is not big. The 2 eclipse moon trees occupy a small half of the area. A total of 24 firefly grasses are planted in the remaining area. After 2 harvests, a total of 4 plants and 20 plants are about to mature. Although the firefly grass occupies a very small area, the rhizomes in the soil are extremely wide. Even if only more than 20 plants are planted, it is already the result of maximizing the use of the soil in the spiritual field. Judging from the rewards brought by good quality firefly grass, it is best to cultivate spiritual plants to improve their appearance when they mature. This way, you can sell more spirit stones and get better light ball rewards, killing two birds with one stone. Now that he can understand the real-time status of the spiritual plants, and with the assistance of the earth attraction technique and the spiritual rain technique, Xuan is full of confidence. He plans to change his usual planting method. Before, he would perform the spiritual rain technique every once in a while every day to nourish the spiritual plants. During the intervals between cultivation, he would come to the spiritual field from time to time to check if there were any alien insects invading. This is a relatively reasonable way of cultivation for him as a low-level spiritual plant master. After being able to understand the status of the spiritual plants in real time, he plans to change the large-scale spiritual rain technique to a local and detailed one. If he finds that a spiritual firefly grass has a need, he will satisfy it and do his best to cultivate the best spiritual plants. He does what he thinks. According to the subtle differences in the needs of each spiritual firefly grass, he performs the spiritual rain technique and the earth attraction technique over and over again until the spiritual power in his body is exhausted. Looking at each green and shiny spiritual firefly grass in the spiritual field, the exhausted Xuan showed a relieved smile. As for not having time to practice today, he said that it was no longer important. Now he just wanted to farm quietly. After 2 days of hard work, 5 mature firefly grasses were placed in front of Xuan. However, probably because they had been planted for too long, the careful cultivation in just a few days could not bring about any qualitative changes. Among the 5 firefly grasses, 3 were of ordinary quality and 2 were of good quality. The spiritual energy brought to Xuan by the 3 ordinary firefly grasses was equivalent to the accumulation of his 9-month practice. As for the other 2 good quality firefly grasses, one was also the earth drawing technique. After absorbing it, Xuan felt that he had a deeper understanding of this technique. The time to activate the technique was shorter, and the degree of control over soil changes was more precise and free. It seems that, if the light ball reward is the same technique, after absorbing it, it will increase the perception of it, which is equivalent to an experience bar. Xuan thought for a moment, and then another light ball reward brought by a good quality firefly grass appeared in his sea of consciousness. Genjin Sword Art. Chapter 5, Restlessness. Genjin Sword Art, a first grade spell, uses a special method to nourish the golden sword energy in the acupoints. When activated, it is as fast as the wind and has extremely strong lethality. A first grade spell. I didn't expect such a good treasure to appear in the light ball. Xuan's mind was in a trance for a moment. He currently mastered 3 spells: the fireball spell, the spirit rain spell, and the earth attraction spell that was recently opened by the white light ball. These 3 spells are not of the mainstream level. Strictly speaking, they are just some superficial use of spiritual power. Although the Genjin Sword Art is only the lowest grade, Xuan is already satisfied. You know, even among the middle level or even high level cultivators of key training, the first grade spell is not something that everyone has. He stayed where he was and slowly gathered his spiritual power according to the route that appeared in his mind. Then, a light golden airflow about 3 inches long and the width of a finger surged out of his body, quickly swept towards the stone wall, and cut a black thorn in 2. Xuan walked over and picked up a piece of thorn with a smooth cross section. He was secretly shocked by the lethality of the pale golden sword energy. Although the black thorns were not spiritual plants, they were very tough. Xuan had once experimented with the fireball technique, and it took half a minute to burn the thorns. Compared with the 2 techniques, the Genjin sword technique was much cleaner and more than twice as lethal. It's just that I just started practicing, and it takes too long to use the sword technique, and the power is greatly reduced. With such a powerful technique, I have to practice diligently in the future. Of course, if I can open an additional Genjin sword technique as an experience bar, that would be the best. Xuan looked at the remaining 15 spiritual fireflies, and couldn't help thinking. He put the picked spiritual fireflies into the jade box, and planned to go out again. He currently has 9 mature spiritual fireflies, 6 of which are of ordinary quality and 3 of good quality. The number of jade boxes is limited, and there is no space for extra spiritual plants. In order to avoid the loss of spiritual power of the firefly grass, these 9 firefly grasses must be sold as soon as possible. At the same time, there are many empty spiritual fields, and the firefly grass in the remaining areas is about to mature. Xuan plans to use the spiritual stones he exchanged to buy some spiritual seeds. If there are enough spiritual stones, see if he can find a low-level protective formation in the market. The white light ball that appeared in the spiritual field in the yard made the spiritual field more important. Xuan was afraid that some cultivators or monsters would sneak in and take away or harm the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, affecting the richness of the white light ball. He told the grass puppet a few words to take care of the house and then left the yard with the jade box containing the firefly grass. As soon as he went out, he happened to meet Zhang Hang, who came back from the market. "Brother Lu, where are you going?" Zhang Hang saw Xuan's figure from a distance and smiled heartily. "Hello, Brother Zhang, I plan to go to the market to take a look." Xuan greeted Zhang Hang. The two exchanged a few pleasantries. He learned that Zhang Hang had just returned from the market and bought several protective talismans to prepare for the upcoming reclamation of the secret realm. "Brother Lu, do you really not want to go to the wilderness to reclaim that new secret realm together?" Zhang Hang changed the subject and asked Xuan unwillingly. "I appreciate your kindness, Brother Zhang. I don't want to do this. I just want to be an ordinary and peaceful spiritual plant master." Xuan waved his hand and refused firmly. "That can't be helped. I was thinking that if I could be with you, we could take care of each other with such a long time of understanding." Zhang Hang said regretfully. "I wish Brother Zhang a lot of adventures and a safe return." Xuan clasped his fists and gave sincere blessings. The two said goodbye. Xuan walked to the market and found that there were many more monks in the market than usual. Defensive talismans became popular, and healing pills were even more rare. As soon as they appeared, many monks scrambled for them. Even though the price was much higher than usual, it was still in short supply. It seems that the news that the Xuan family is about to open up a new secret realm has spread in the Linyang market. So many key cultivating cultivators and low-level and mid-level cultivators want to get a piece of the pie. I don't know how many cultivators will get the opportunity, and how many cultivators will become stepping stones for others. Xuan felt the restless atmosphere in the market, unmoved, and watched quietly. He stayed in the market for 2 or 3 moments, paying attention to every piece of information around him, and asked the casual cultivators who set up stalls from time to time. Finally, after turning a few intersections, he came to a medicine shop called Beikeo Tang. The owner of the medicine shop is an alchemist, and the demand for various alchemy materials is relatively large. The spiritual medicines that Xuan planted before were all sold to this medicine shop, and the price was fair. Entering the medicine shop, a strong smell of medicine came, and Xuan entered a wooden house familiarly. The wooden house was piled with various spiritual medicines of all sizes, and several medicine boys were busy processing them. "Lu kid, are you here to sell firefly grass again?" A thin old man saw Xuan, pouted his bulging chest, and called him. "Yes, manager he, some firefly grass is ripe, come and sell it to your store." The thin old man is a relative of the alchemist in the medicine shop. He usually helps manage some chores in the medicine shop. If Xuan wants to sell firefly grass, he has to deal with him. The two are quite familiar with each other. "How many?" 9. "How many spirit stones are there for each firefly grass now?" Xuan took out the jade box from his chest and asked. "Still the old price, 3 low-grade spirit stones per plant." "Manager he, this is not fair of you, right?" Hearing the answer of the thin old man, Xuan's hand that was stretched forward to grab the jade box retracted again. "According to my understanding, many of the firefly grass planted by many spiritual planters in the North District have recently been infested with insects, and the yield is lower than usual. It is rumored everywhere in the market that the Xuan family in the central area is going to open up a new secret realm, which has caused the price of healing pills to rise greatly. As the main material for refining healing pills, firefly grass is still sold at the previous market price. That would be too much of an insult to us honest casual cultivators. You little devil, your cultivation is not high, but your nose is very sharp." Manager he laughed and scolded, and said with a straight face. 3 spirit stones plus 20 broken spirits for 1 firefly grass. No bargaining. Lu Xuan lowered his head and thought for a while, knowing that this was already a very fair price. Is this the price for good quality firefly grass? Oh. The thin old man raised his head with a surprised look. You kid also planted good quality firefly grass? Let me see. High quality raw materials can slightly increase the success rate and effect of pills when refining pills, and are very popular among alchemists. Yes, it is indeed a good quality Lingian grass. You are so young, and the spiritual energy in the spiritual field you occupy is meager. It is not easy for you to grow such a good spiritual plant. Well, I will buy these 3 good quality Lingian grasses at the price of 3 spiritual stones and 50 broken spirits for each one. What do you think? Lu Xuan nodded quickly. After all, it was only slightly better than ordinary Lingian grass, not top grade or even perfect Lingian grass. It was quite good to be able to increase the broken spirits by 30 for each one. He handed the 9 Lingian grasses to the thin old man. The old man checked them carefully, without note picking, counted the spiritual stones, and handed them to Lu Xuan. 6 ordinary Lingian grasses and 3 good Lingian grasses were exchanged for a total of 29 low-grade spiritual stones and 70 broken spirits. Lu Xuan carefully put them around his waist, feeling the cold breath of the spiritual stones coming through his clothes, and his heart was burning. Chapter 6 Red Cloud Pine. 9 firefly grasses were exchanged for a total of 29 low-grade spirit stones and 70 broken spirits. With the 6 spirit stones and 82 broken spirits in my hand, I now have a total of 36 low-grade spirit stones and 52 broken spirits. It's a pity that I was harmed by the damn black budworm larvae that day, otherwise I would have been even richer. Lu Xuan couldn't help but grit his teeth when he thought of the black thread that cost him 6 spirit stones and 50 broken spirits. Money makes people brave. With such a large amount of spirit stones, his back straightened a lot. After leaving Baikao Tang, Lu Xuan was worried about the spirit field whose protection power was better than nothing, and hurried to the next destination. There are all kinds of shops in the market, including some small shops that specialize in or sell spirit seeds. He came to a shop with a familiar way. An ordinary middle-aged cultivator of low-level key training was taking care of the spirit seedlings placed in the shop. Seeing Lu Xuan come in, he stood up to greet him. "Little brother, is there anything I can help you with?" the shop owner asked. "Let me take a look first," Lu Xuan replied, his eyes sweeping across the entire store. There were many kinds of spiritual seeds on display in the store, with various shapes, and Lu Xuan didn't recognize most of them. There were also many seedlings of spiritual plants in the corner, with strange appearances, which Lu Xuan was even more unfamiliar with. After the spiritual plants matured, if they were allowed to continue growing, there would be a certain possibility of producing spiritual seeds, but most of these spiritual seeds were not suitable for cultivating new spiritual plants. Most of the spiritual seeds need to be condensed through various special means, and there are even some condensation methods that only those large sects know. Especially those spiritual seeds of rare species and high grades, their condensation methods will never be spread to the outside world. Even the condensation of ordinary spiritual seeds is not something that ordinary casual cultivators can master. There might be some great cultivators or big families standing behind this store. How many spiritual firefly grass spiritual seeds are there? Lu Xuan pointed to the spiritual firefly grass seeds that looked like dry tea leaves on the shelf, and asked the middle-aged cultivator. 40 spirit fragments per piece, buy no less than 10 at a time. 50 spirit fragments for retail. I need 20. Also, please recommend a first-grade spirit plant seedling, or seed to me, preferably one that does not require much spiritual energy, and has simple growing conditions. 24 spirit fireflies were planted in the small spiritual field in the yard before, but Lu Xuan did not plan to buy the same number of seeds this time. The spirit fireflies and the eclipse moon tree have no grades. The eclipse moon tree is more valuable, but it is not yet first grade. The richness of the white light ball that appears after the spirit plant matures is affected by many factors, including the type and grade of the spirit plant. So Lu Xuan wanted to try planting a relatively simple first grade spirit plant, to see what kind of light ball reward it would have after it matures. The spiritual energy requirement is not high, and the growing conditions are simple. What do you think of these two? Both are first grade spiritual plants. One is the blood-sucking vine spiritual seed, which requires a certain amount of blood and flesh essence of exotic beasts or monsters to feed. After maturity, taking it directly can enhance the blood and ki in the cultivator's body, or assist in practicing certain special exercises. The other is a red cloud pine seedling. During the cultivation process, it occasionally needs fire spiritual energy to nourish it. The red cloud pine spiritual fruit produced is rich in spiritual energy and tastes strange and wonderful. It is very popular among female cultivators. The higher the grade of the spiritual plant, the more stringent the growth environment and conditions are. There are various complex conditions such as spiritual energy, spiritual soil, and spiritual springs. The cultivation of these two first grade spiritual plants is relatively simple. Xuan first ruled out the blood-sucking vine. Just kidding. He is barely in the stage of food and clothing now, and he may not eat a meal of monster meat for 10 days or half a month. What if he grows this blood-sucking vine? What can he feed it? You can't cut your own meat to feed the vine, right? As for the red cloud pine, he currently has the fireball technique, and there are more than 10 spirit firefly grasses and eclipse moon fruits to be drawn later. Maybe some fire-related techniques will be drawn, so it is not a problem to supply it with a small amount of fire-related spiritual power. How many spiritual stones does that red cloud pine seedling need? Xuan pointed to a pine seedling in the corner. The small pine tree was less than 2 feet tall, and its pine leaves were like fiery red needles. From a distance, it looked like a small cluster of red clouds, which is why the red cloud pine got its name. 5 spiritual stones. The middle-aged cultivator applied 20 firefly grass seeds, this red cloud pine seedling, and 12 spiritual stones. How about I take them all? Little brother, you are too hard at bargaining. How about this? I will lose money to gain publicity, and add 70 broken spirits. Dao, you also know that it is not easy for a small casual cultivator to earn a few spiritual stones. I was tempted by the idea, because I saw that red cloud pine was destined to be with me. I don't know if I can plant it successfully if I really buy it. 50 broken spirits, no more. Deal. The middle-aged cultivator shook his head and smiled bitterly. He handed the 20 firefly grass seeds to Xuan and helped to pack the red cloud pine seedlings in a cloth bag and told Xuan to plant them as soon as possible because delaying for a long time would affect the vitality of the seedlings. Xuan followed suit and nodded. With a look of regret, he took out the 12 spiritual stones that were not fully warmed up and the 50 broken spirits, and the money and goods were settled. In the market, Xuan argued with a casual cultivator with a red face. Fellow Daoist, this protective formation is only second hand, and there are bloodstains on it. This is a very bad omen, and the meaning is unknown. 20 spirit stones is already a high price. The casual cultivator looked helpless. Little brother, if the formation is brand new, then I will at least double the price. As for the bloodstains, it will not affect its protective ability. You cut it from 25 spirit stones to 20. Is there anyone who would bargain like this? There is nothing wrong with the formation, but its origin is unknown, which is a bit worrying. Moreover, I don't know how long it has been used. I'm afraid it can't be used. Xuan pretended to want to buy it, but he was worried. How about this? 21 spirit stones. If there is any problem with the formation, you can come to the market to find me. I have been setting up a stall here for more than 10 years, and I still have some credibility. Okay, just consider it as making friends with you. Xuan made a decision, and took out 21 low-grade spirit stones. No, let's talk about spirit stones, not friendship. The casual cultivator quickly refused. Xuan had been fighting with him for nearly half an hour to cut off a few spirit stones. If there was really any friendship, I don't know how many spirit stones would be used to offset it. Xuan took the array plate with a little dark red blood stain from the stall owner and carefully put it in his arms. He didn't care about the blood stain at all. After all, no matter how scary a ghost is, it can't be compared to a poor ghost. He used to never go to roadside shops to avoid bargaining. In this cultivation world, in order to save a little bit of spirit stones, he has developed a deadly bargaining skill. The spirit stones brought by the 9 spirit fireflies have all been spent, and my original family has also been sacrificed. But the harvest is still quite big. 20 spirit firefly seeds and a red cloud pine seedling. The most important thing is that the protective array that I have been thinking about is finally in my hands. Xuan pinched his chest, which had become shriveled again, and thought to himself. Chapter 7 Sword Key Talisman. The purpose of going out was achieved. Xuan was thinking about the spiritual plants in the yard. He did not stay for long, and returned home directly. In the house, he could not wait to take out the array plate with dark red bloodstains. The array plate was engraved with a basic protective array. After being activated, it can protect a certain range, and can also serve as a warning when foreign objects invade. Xuan adjusted his breathing, waited for his mind to calm down, circulated the spiritual power in his body, and slowly injected it into the array plate according to the instructions of the casual cultivator stall owner. Under the stimulation of spiritual power, the array plate flickered with a faint white light. After absorbing enough spiritual power, the white light instantly magnified hundreds or thousands of times, and enveloped the entire yard. The faint white light swayed, like a layer of egg white. Xuan continued to adjust and control the array plate. The faint aura cover kept changing according to the shape of the courtyard and gradually disappeared. From the outside, there was no abnormality at all. As the master of the array plate, he could naturally still clearly sense the existence of the aura shield. The shield has a certain degree of protection, and can block the invasion of foreign objects. If anything tries to penetrate the spiritual shield and invade, Xuan can detect it at the first time, as long as he is at home. After the protective array was successfully arranged, Xuan finally let go of the worry that he had been holding. At this moment, he felt very safe, and no longer had to worry about the spiritual plants in the yard being harmed by bad people and monsters, thus affecting the reward of the white light ball. After a short rest, Xuan took the spiritual firefly grass seeds and the cloth bag containing the red cloud pine seedlings, and came to the spiritual field. After harvesting 9 spiritual firefly grasses, a large area of the spiritual field was vacated. Xuan gestured, and took out 10 spiritual firefly grass seeds, estimating their future growth range. The spiritual power in his body surged, and the soil of the spiritual field bulged slightly. Under the control of the earth drawing technique, 10 cracks of moderate size appeared. The spiritual firefly grass seeds, which looked like dry tea leaves, were placed in the cracks one by one, and then a shallow layer of spiritual field soil was spread. Threads of spiritual raindrops seeped into the soil, nourishing the spiritual firefly seeds inside. Xuan tried to focus his mind on the seeds, sensing a feeling of joy, and striving for progress from the seeds. He was infected by this emotion, and couldn't help but smile. Little guys, grow up well, break out of the soil quickly, and see this magical world. He planned to plant the remaining 10 spiritual firefly seeds after the other 15 spiritual fireflies matured. Then, he took out the red cloud pine seedlings. The seedlings had been in the bag for half a day, and looked a little droopy. Xuan quickly controlled the soil of the spiritual field, and buried the root and stem of the seedlings in the soil. After planting, he performed the spiritual rain technique again. Under the full nourishment of the spiritual rain, the red cloud pine seedlings regained vitality. Xuan circulated the spiritual power in his body, and a fist-sized red fireball appeared in front of him. The fireball drew an arc, and flew towards the red cloud pine seedlings. At the moment, when it was about to touch the red cloud pine, the red fireball silently collapsed, and turned into hundreds of tiny flames, which merged into the branches, leaves and other parts of the red cloud pine. Under the nourishment of many flames, the originally grey-black branches of the red cloud pine revealed a faint red color, and there was a slight burning sensation. Countless branches and leaves like fiery red needles all stood up, and the whole red cloud pine was like a hedgehog that was stimulated, which was very interesting. Xuan looked at the red cloud pine in a state of stress, and couldn't help laughing. 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. During these 3 days, Xuan stayed at home, and didn't go out. In order to get better quality spiritual plants, he spent most of his time taking care of them and cultivating them. He took time to practicing the earth-inducing technique and the Zhengjin sword technique. The technique he practiced was called Yin Gong, which was a common product on the market. There was nothing surprising about it, and the speed of absorbing spiritual energy was extremely slow. Of course, for Lu Xuan at that time and even now, cheapness was its biggest advantage. After practicing the earth attraction technique and the Zhengjin sword technique for a few days, I became more proficient. At least the speed of releasing the sword technique has increased a lot. If I really encounter an enemy, this improvement will not have much effect. Anyway, the ending is the same. The sword technique is not half performed, and the road collapses. Every time at this time, I miss the white light ball especially, and look forward to the appearance of the experience bar again. Lu Xuan sighed, and came to the yard. After the careful care of the past few days, 4 more spirit firefly grasses have fully matured, and there are 11 that are about to mature. After a few more days of careful cultivation, the probability of the appearance of good quality spirit firefly grass has also increased. Among the 4 spirit firefly grasses, 3 are good and 1 is ordinary. The ordinary spirit firefly grass still brings 3 months of cultivation. As for the 3 good quality spirit firefly grasses, Lu Xuan picked up the 3 slightly flickering white light balls in the soil one by one. Harvest 1 Lingying grass, get a first grade spell, Zhengjin sword art. Harvest 1 Lingying grass, get half a year of cultivation. Harvest 1 Lingying grass, get a first grade talisman, the sword key talisman. Several thoughts flashed through Lu Xuan's mind, and the rewards of the 3 white light balls were also revealed. After absorbing the light balls containing the sword art, Lu Xuan's understanding of the sword art went to a higher level, and the speed of casting was faster, and the power was also increased by 10% or 20%. Ordinary quality Lingying grass brings 3 months of cultivation, and good quality brings half a year of cultivation. This is a pleasant surprise. Lu Xuan sighed in his heart, and then turned his attention to a talisman that quietly emerged in his hand. The talisman was dark yellow, with mysterious and obscure rune patterns engraved on the edges. In the middle, there was a faint sword energy that stood out on the talisman, as if it would shoot out at any time. Sword key talisman. First grade talisman, disposable, equivalent to a full strength attack from a mid-level key training cultivator who is good at swordsmanship, extremely lethal. First grade talisman, this is a big prize. Although it is only a disposable talisman, swordsmanship has always been famous for killing. This sword key talisman is equivalent to a full strength attack from a mid-level key training cultivator, and its attack power can be seen. For Lu Xuan, who is at the 3rd level of key training, it is a very good killer. Lu Xuan is satisfied, and he is even more looking forward to the remaining 11 spiritual firefly grasses. The 10 spiritual firefly grass seeds planted 3 days ago have all broken through the soil and sprouted new buds. The tender green leaves are extremely narrow, with dust-like fluorescent dots on them. If you don't observe carefully, you can hardly detect them. The spiritual firefly grass has entered a rapid growth stage and is growing well. It has an extremely strong demand for spiritual energy. Can you, a mere inferior spiritual plant master, satisfy it? Lu Xuan looked at the idea that appeared in his mind as his mind was concentrated, and sneered. I want to fight 10 of them. The growth trend of the red cloud pine was slightly slower, growing about an inch. Whenever Lu Xuan stimulated it with the flames created by the fireball technique, the thin red pine leaves would stand on end, and would only return to their natural state after being completely digested. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Breathing Method. Night fell. Lu Xuan dragged his slightly tired body back to the house. Although there are not many spiritual plants in the spiritual field at present, there are 11 spiritual firefly grasses that are about to mature, 10 newly planted seedlings, 2 eclipse moon trees, and 1 red cloud pine. However, due to the extremely delicate cultivation methods, the spiritual rain technique and the earth-inducing technique were performed round after round, so after a day, even Lu Xuan, a key training cultivator, would feel tired. However, he enjoyed it. Compared with watching many spiritual plants grow vigorously, this little fatigue was nothing. He had a simple dinner, rested for a while, and then sat on the wooden bed, practicing the exercises to restore his spiritual power. The sudden surge in his cultivation caused the spiritual power in his body to stagnate, and he had to adapt and adjust. Suddenly, he noticed that the array disk beside him suddenly glowed. A miniature spiritual energy shield appeared on the array disk, and at a certain position of the shield, a faint spiritual light flickered like ripples. Xuan looked serious, remembering the location of the flashing spiritual light. The sword energy talisman slid to the palm of his left hand, and he suddenly stood up, came to the blue-gray stone wall, and jumped. Crossing the stone wall, Xuan's sharp eyes saw a black shadow twisting its small body and quickly fleeing into the distance. Seeing the small black shadow trying to invade his spiritual field, Xuan was furious. How could he let it escape so easily? The spiritual energy in his body was running rapidly, and soon, a faint golden sword energy condensed in an instant, like a stream of light, whistling towards the small black shadow. The black shadow seemed to be solidified by the sword intent, and its speed slowed down a lot, and it was cut into two by the golden sword energy. The light dissipated, and the surroundings were dim. Xuan held the sword energy talisman tightly, looked around, and saw that there was nothing unusual, and slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. He came to the chopped black shadow, picked up the two broken pieces, and returned to the yard. As soon as he entered the house, a grey-black grass rope swam to Xuan's feet, and tapped his knees, indicating that a foreign object had invaded the spiritual field. I have already destroyed it, but your warning just arrived. The reaction speed is good. Xuan looked at the grass puppet whose grass rope retracted after reminding him, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Under the dim candlelight, he could see the remains of the black shadow in his hand. It was black all over, with thick fingers and wrinkles of varying depths on its body. It was the black bud insect that Xuan had found in common harmful demon insects and their solutions. One time is not enough. Come again. You think my spiritual field is your back garden, right? Xuan controlled the Zhengjin sword art to cut the two halves of the black bud insect into pieces, and then use the fireball technique to burn it into black ash, and the anger in his heart completely disappeared. Fortunately, this protective formation worked and blocked the invasion of the black budworm in time. Otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. He was still frightened when he thought that the spiritual plants in the spiritual field might be parasitized by the black budworm eggs, thus affecting his light ball reward. He felt more and more that it was an extremely wise decision to spend a lot of money to buy this second-hand formation. The appearance of the black budworm was just a small ripple in the peaceful farming life. In the next few days, nothing happened again. Xuan lived a simple and fulfilling life. Every day, he used the spiritual rain technique and the earth attraction technique to carefully cultivate the spiritual plants, and from time to time use the fireball technique to stimulate the red cloud pine. He didn't go out much for a few days, and only Zhang Han came once. He was about to follow the Xuan family cultivators and hundreds of thousands of scattered cultivators into the wilderness to cultivate the newly appeared secret realm. Before leaving, he came to say goodbye to Xuan and asked him to help take care of his wife and children at home. Apart from this, Xuan basically had no contact with other people. 5 days later, he harvested 2 more waves of mature firefly grass, a total of 8 plants. Only the last 3 plants were left in the spiritual field. Among the 8 plants, 3 were of ordinary quality and 5 were of good quality. Among the 8 white light balls that appeared, 3 of them were awarded with cultivation, which gave Xuan an additional year of cultivation and increased his spiritual power. 2 of the other 5 plants were earth drawing techniques and Zhengjin sword techniques. With these 2 experience packs, Xuan had a deeper understanding of these 2 techniques, and his speed of casting was faster and his power was much higher. There were 3 more, and 3 talismans were opened, all of which were of the first grade, namely the sword energy talisman, the speed enhancing swiftness talisman, and the defensive earth armor talisman. Xuan collected them all for emergency use. After picking these 8 mature firefly grass, a large area was vacated in the spiritual field. Xuan carefully planted the remaining 10 firefly grass seeds. Soon, tender green shoots sprouted and trembled gently in the breeze. The 10 plants planted before have grown a lot. Each plant is about 3 inches tall. The leaves have become dark green, and the dots of fluorescence on them are becoming more prominent. Lu Xuan didn't have to wait for long for the last 3 plants. One day, after each of them performed the spirit rain technique, the faint progress bars below the 3 plants were pulled to the maximum. With his mind focused, Lu Xuan found an unexpected surprise. Mature spirit firefly grass of good quality. *2. Mature spirit firefly grass of superior quality. Finally, a plant of superior quality has been cultivated. Lu Xuan grabbed the spirit firefly grass with even stronger fluorescence, feeling relieved. A total of 24 plants, under the careful cultivation of the spirit rain technique. Finally a plant of superior quality appeared. Although the probability is extremely small, Lu Xuan also understands it. After all, the spiritual energy in his own spiritual field is thin, and when he learned about the current state of the spirit firefly grass, it was already in its later stage, and the improvement in quality was not great, and it was difficult to have a qualitative improvement. If you want to produce a large number of high quality spiritual plants, or even high level perfect quality, at least 2 conditions must be met. The concentration of spiritual power, and the careful cultivation of spiritual seeds from the beginning to the mature stage. Lu Xuan concluded. In the spiritual field, 3 white light balls flickered slightly, attracting Lu Xuan's attention. Harvest 1 spiritual firefly grass, and gain half a year of cultivation. Cultivation again. I have no motivation to practice hard. Lu Xuan felt the surging spiritual power that appeared out of thin air in his body and sighed. Harvest 1 spiritual firefly grass, and gain a first grade talisman to exorcise evil spirits. A dark yellow talisman appeared in Lu Xuan's hand. There was an evil ghost pattern in the middle of the talisman, which was suppressed by 2 chains composed of strange patterns. Exorcise evil spirits, a first grade talisman. After use, it can purify and drive away evil spirits within a certain range, which is rare. Or thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind, and he carefully put away the evil spirit talisman with the evil ghost pattern. The last white ball of light was the one of the best quality. The quality of the spiritual plant was one of the factors that affected the level of reward. Lu Xuan had high expectations for it. The ball of light turned into countless light points, and poured into Lu Xuan's mind. Or thought flashed through his mind, and a technique appeared in his sea of consciousness. The breath containment technique, after practicing it, can restrain one's breath and cultivation, and has a very good concealment ability. Chapter 9 Full Moon. Although it is only an auxiliary technique, and cannot be used for cultivation or actual combat, its value is not inferior to the method of cultivation for me at present. The appearance of the white light ball made Lu Xuan's cultivation rise like a rocket. But he himself had ordinary qualifications, which was fine in a short period of time. After a long time, people would definitely find out that his cultivation was different, and then he would probably get into trouble. Cultivators generally do not take the initiative to explore other people's cultivation. After all, this is an impolite behavior, and it is easy to make the other party unhappy. But with more contact with people, you will naturally encounter intentional or unintentional prying. The emergence of the breath retaining method can disguise oneself to a certain extent. As usual, just a small spiritual plant master with low cultivation. Unless the other party's cultivation is much higher than oneself, or even one realm higher, or practice some exploration type techniques, it is difficult to detect one's true cultivation. Lu Xuan slowly circulated the spiritual power in his body according to the route of the technique. In an instant, the spiritual power fluctuations on his body instantly converged, and the whole person's sense of existence decreased a lot. After experimenting for a while, he revealed his cultivation level of the 2nd level of key training, and returned to his usual ordinary little casual cultivator. In the spiritual field, the 2 spiritual plants planted before, the firefly grass, had all been picked, leaving only the 2 eclipse moon trees on the left and right. The eclipse moon tree has also grown a lot during this period. Among the green leaves, the crescent-shaped eclipse moon fruit has gradually become fuller, from concave to flat, and then to round. In this state, the silver hook can still hide in the leaves, looming, and as it becomes more and more round and full, it seems a little half hidden, ready to come out. Although the eclipse moon tree has not yet entered the grade, its value is much more precious than the firefly grass. Lu Xuan is looking forward to what light ball reward it will bring him when the moon is full. The newly planted firefly grass and red cloud pine in the spiritual field are still some time away from maturity. The firefly grass is relatively easy to grow and generally enters the mature stage in about 2 or 3 months. As for the red cloud pine, because it is a first grade spiritual plant, Lu Xuan estimates that it will take about half a year to mature. Of course, this is the normal cultivation cycle of these two spiritual plants for most low-level spiritual plant masters. Lu Xuan guessed that, because he knew the current state of the spiritual plants, he might be able to slightly shorten their maturity time. After all, other spiritual plant masters could not understand the subtle needs of spiritual plants as accurately as he did, nor could they meet them meticulously. For them, cultivating spiritual plants is just a means of making a living, and cultivation is the right way. For example, the spiritual rain technique, the cultivation method adopted by spiritual plant masters, is usually large-scale watering, and it is completely impossible to control it finely and perform it locally like Lu Xuan, just to keep the spiritual plants in the best state. The picked spiritual firefly grass could not be kept for too long, so Lu Xuan planned to go to Baikotang again and sell the 15 spiritual firefly grass in his hand to manager he. Among the 15 spiritual firefly grass, there are 4 ordinary quality, 10 good quality, and 1 superior quality. He fed 2 broken spirits to the grass puppet, opened the protective formation, and went out with confidence. In Baikotang, there is still the familiar medicinal fragrance. The medicine boys were busy processing the materials, while the thin old man was leisurely lying on a wooden chair, flipping through the account book in his hand. Hey, Luke, it is here again. How's the harvest? You have to tell me the current market of Lingyiang grass. Lu Xuan showed a mysterious smile. Now that a large number of low-level key training cultivators have entered the wilderness, the demand for healing pills has dropped a lot. It's just that the insect pests in the northern area have recently shown signs of intensification, and the spiritual fields of many low-level spiritual plant masters have been invaded, so the price is still the same as last time. Ordinary 3 spirit stones and 20 broken spirits per plant, and good quality ones plus 30 broken spirits per plant. Lu Xuan heard this and nodded gently. When he came here, he saw that the gathering place of casual cultivators, which was very lively in the past, was much quieter and empty everywhere. As for the insect pests, he had also heard that the spiritual fields of many casual cultivators and spiritual plant masters were not protected by formations, and were invaded by monster insects, causing heavy losses. Here, the firefly grass I brought this time, you can sort them by quality, manager he. Lu Xuan placed 14 firefly grasses in front of the thin old man. As for this one, it's another price. He finally took out the high quality firefly grass and shook it in front of manager he. Is this a high quality firefly grass? The thin old man had been buying firefly grasses for many years, and he could tell the uniqueness of this firefly grass at a glance, and asked in surprise. Yes, it is indeed a high quality firefly grass. With your spiritual field with almost no spiritual energy, it is rare to be able to grow firefly grass of this quality. It seems that you may have a good talent in cultivating spiritual plants. He looked at Lu Xuan and sighed. It's just luck. I just use the time that others use to practice to grow spiritual plants. Lu Xuan said half truthfully. I don't care what method you use. The more high quality firefly grass you grow, the better. I will buy it at a price that satisfies you. I will buy this firefly grass at the price of 3 spirit stones and 70 broken spirits. What do you think? Manager, he asked Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan raised his eyebrows and smiled without saying anything. It goes without saying that he has to pay more. The thin old man naturally understood the meaning and quickly said a price that made Lu Xuan excited. 4 low-grade spirit stones, no more. After all, it is 2 or 3 times more than the purchase price of ordinary firefly grass. Deal. Manager, he quickly handed the spirit stones exchanged for 15 firefly grass to Lu Xuan, a total of 51 spirit stones and 80 broken spirits. With the 3 spirit stones left before, his net worth suddenly increased to nearly 55 spirit stones. Lu boy, if you have this quality of firefly grass in the future, remember to send it to me. The price will definitely not disappoint you. Manager He looked at Lu Xuan, who was piling spirit stones on his waist, and specifically instructed, if you really have a talent for spiritual plants, I can introduce you to a way. Maybe it's your chance. Oh. Lu Xuan was aroused by the words of the thin old man and looked at him curiously. It's not enough now. Let's see the quality of the spiritual plants you bring in the future. Thank you, Manager He. I will come to take care of your business in the future. Lu Xuan didn't care much about the chance the old man mentioned. After all, with the appearance of the white light ball, no matter how big the chance was, it would not be a big deal. On the contrary, it might affect his current peaceful and simple farming life. He said goodbye to Manager He, put a bunch of spiritual stones on his waist, and went straight home. At first, he wanted to buy some monster meat and spiritual rice to improve his life and satisfy his appetite, but when he really passed by the stall, he was a little reluctant. He still has to pay the rent for the yard next month. Chapter 10, Silver Blade. The monthly rent for the spiritual field in the courtyard is 5 spiritual stones, which is paid every 6 months. It is less than a month before the next payment. He is about to spend more than half of the spiritual stones in his hand. There is still some time before the spiritual plants in the spiritual field mature. Lu Xuan decided to save them first for emergency use. The spiritual field has been used to the maximum extent. Even if he has enough spiritual stones, he has no place to plant new spiritual seeds. He had to return home with more than 50 spiritual stones. After returning home, he closed the door of the courtyard, almost isolated from the outside world, and cultivated spiritual plants with one heart. After a few days, the silver white fruits on the 2 eclipse moon trees became more and more round and full, like round moons hanging on the trees. It is about to enter the mature stage. Lu Xuan took the time to count them. There are about 42 eclipse moon fruits on the tree. According to the purchase price he notes, each eclipse moon fruit is about 1 spiritual stone, with little fluctuation. It is just because of his careful cultivation during this period that the quality of dozens of eclipse moon fruits is quite good. Lu Xuan estimates that most of them are of good quality, and a few are of superior quality. Uncle Lu, are you home? One day, a familiar childish voice came from outside the courtyard gate. Lu Xuan opened the courtyard gate, and a chubby child of about 7 years old came in through the crack of the door. Judging from his facial features, he was 70% similar to Zhang Hang, who went to explore the wilderness. It was Zhang Hang's child, named Zhang Xuan. Because he was not much older than Lu Xuan, he would come to visit him from time to time. I thought you were not at home. The door is closed every day, and I haven't seen you for a long time. Zhang Xuan muttered, and jumped to the straw puppet and hugged it. Zyoko, long time no see, I miss you so much. The straw puppet was tied tightly by him. Sensing that there was an outsider in the yard, it still stretched out a grey straw rope to Lu Xuan, fulfilling its responsibility to guard the spiritual field. Okay, if you hug your friend again, your head will fall off. Lu Xuan looked at the grey grass tumor on the straw puppet's head that was about to fall off, and smiled and said to Zhang Xuan, who was particularly enthusiastic. The two returned to the house. Zhang Xuan slumped in a wooden chair, staring blankly at the spiritual plants in the yard. It's still more comfortable here, Uncle Lu. You don't need to practice martial arts, learn all kinds of spiritual medicines, and spiritual mineral knowledge. Lu Xuan laughed dumbly, as if he saw the child who was worried about learning in his previous life. By the way, your father has been away for so long. Is there any news about him? He asked Zhang Xuan. How can it be so fast? It takes half a month for the light to travel. But my father is so powerful, he must be able to kill many monsters and bring me many treasures. Zhang Xuan said with longing eyes. In the boy's heart, his father's figure is always particularly tall, as if he can block all the wind and waves. Lu Xuan nodded, chatted with the child for a few more words, and then came to the spiritual field to check the growth of the spiritual plants. In the spiritual field, whether it is the progress bar, the real-time status, or the white light ball that appears after maturity, only Lu Xuan can see it. So he is not worried that Zhang Xuan will find out the abnormality of the spiritual field. Uncle Lu, I see you are busy in the spiritual field. Do you want me to help? Zhang Xuan took a break and saw that Lu Xuan was busy all the time. He rolled up his sleeves and walked to Lu Xuan's side. Hey, don't move. I can do it alone. Lu Xuan hurriedly stopped him. Just kidding. One of the factors that affect the light ball reward is the degree of participation in the planting process. If the light ball's reward is affected by Xuan's help, it will be more trouble than gain. Humph, my mother usually asks me to help, and I don't want to help. Xuan was rejected by Lu Xuan, and his face was a little embarrassed. He clasped his fists in front of his chest and snorted coldly. How many weeks have you practiced the skills today? Have you memorized the common spiritual medicines and spiritual minerals? Seeing that the child was staying in the spiritual field and had no intention of leaving, Lu Xuan asked. With each question, Zhang Xuan's expression became heavier. After Lu Xuan finished speaking, he waved his hand fiercely and ran out. I will never come to play with you again. Ha ha ha. Lu Xuan laughed mercilessly. He did not try to coax him, knowing full well that a child's temper would come and go quickly, and that he would come to play with him in a few days. In the next 3 days, Zhang Xuan did not come to the yard as expected, and Lu Xuan was at ease, cultivating the firefly grass and red cloud pine every day, and watching the eclipse moon fruit mature step by step. Finally, with his mind focused, Lu Xuan realized that the 4 eclipse moon fruits were fully mature. All 4 eclipse moon fruits were of good quality, which was worthy of his careful care during this period. He carefully picked them and put them in a special container. Then, his eyes were attracted by the 4 white light balls floating on the eclipse moon tree. On the light balls, dots of white light flickered. Lu Xuan absorbed the first one, and a thought flashed through his mind. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and obtain the first grade magic weapon, the silver blade, remnant. A slender object appeared in Lu Xuan's hand. First grade magic weapon. Lu Xuan was suddenly startled and looked at the object in his hand carefully. A slender thin piece, as thick as a finger, with an irregular shape, and a cold feeling at the touch, and the edge looked extremely sharp. Lu Xuan controlled the thin slice with his spiritual consciousness, and his mind moved. The slice turned into an invisible silver light, and penetrated deeply into the stone wall. It's amazingly powerful, worthy of being a first grade magic weapon, but what does this remnant mean? This magic weapon is incomplete, but it seems to be very powerful when used. Lu Xuan was puzzled and looked at the remaining 3 white light balls. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit, and obtain the first grade magic weapon silver blade, remnant. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit, and obtain the first grade talisman purification talisman. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit, and obtain the first grade magic weapon silver blade, remnant. The purification talisman can keep the cultivator's mind clear for a long time, and not be confused by evil spirits. It is a very good auxiliary talisman. As for the other 2 white light balls, Lu Xuan looked at the 3 silver white slices in his hand, and was stunned for a moment. The 3 slices were all different in shape, but the common point was that they were all extremely sharp, without tarnishing the reputation of the so-called first grade magic weapon. Moreover, Lu Xuan unexpectedly discovered that he could actually drive these 3 fragments of the silver split blade at the same time. Logically speaking, with his current spiritual consciousness at the 3rd level of key training, it is extremely difficult to control 3 first grade magic tools at the same time. Could it be that these 3 irregular thin slices come from the same magic tool, and only when all the thin slices are put together can they form a complete silver split blade? Lu Xuan compared the edges of the thin slices, and felt that this guess was closer to reality. I just don't know how many thin slices are needed to successfully piece together a complete silver split blade. Now I just hope that the remaining 38 eclipse moon fruits can produce as many silver split blade fragments as possible. Although the fragments are also good to use, who would want a broken one when there is a complete one? Lu Xuan looked at the eclipse moon fruit hanging on the eclipse moon tree like a jade plate, and thought in a daze. Chapter 11 Withered Seeds. Although the first grade magic weapon silver splitting blade brought by the eclipse moon fruit was only a fragment, and it still needed to be collected and combined, Lu Xuan was still quite satisfied. You know, in the cultivation world, among the cultivation resources of the same grade, the most valuable are the recipes and exercises, followed by formations, magic tools, elixirs, and talismans, and finally various cultivation materials, such as spiritual herbs, spiritual minerals, and monster flesh. The eclipse moon tree is just a low-grade spiritual plant, so even if it is just a fragment of magic weapon, it can be considered a pleasant surprise. He looked at the 3 silver white flakes flying around his body, looking forward to the moment when the silver splitting blade was completed. On this day, there was a sound in the courtyard that had not been disturbed by any cultivators. Outside the courtyard, a gentle voice with a hint of anxiety came. "Brother Lu, are you at home?" Lu Xuan immediately recognized that the owner of the voice was Zhang Hang's wife. He had not seen her many times, and only when he went to Zhang Hang's house as a guest. He remembered that she was a beautiful and gentle woman named Xuan, who was at the 2nd level of key training. Lu Xuan opened the gate and saw Xuan, who looked a little haggard. "Sister-in-law, is there anything wrong? Please come in and talk." "No, Brother Lu, I really have something to trouble you." Seeing Lu Xuan's appearance, Xuan's rapid breathing slowed down a lot. "I heard from Liu Zhang at home that there were black budworm larvae in your spiritual field, Brother Lu, and it took a lot of spiritual stones to find someone to deal with it. Recently, many independent cultivators in the North District have suffered from insect pests. I have been on guard day and night, but I still can't prevent it. The spiritual plants in my spiritual field have been invaded by the black budworm larvae. When I found it, it had reached a relatively serious stage. I want to ask you, Brother Lu, which independent cultivators nearby can get rid of the black budworm larvae, and how much reward is required?" Lu Xuan pondered for a moment and told Xuan the information he had obtained. "I know 3. Ling Iron Fairy who is good at flying needle magic, Li Zhu, a sword cultivator who can turn sword energy into silk, and Kinming, who has profound attainments in ice magic. Among the 3, Kinming's price is the lowest, requiring 7 spirit stones, so there is some room for bargaining." 7 spirit stones. Xuan heard this, a trace of entanglement flashed in her eyes, pursed her lips, and rubbed her hands in front of her abdomen unnaturally. In order to be more fully prepared, her husband Zhang Hang used most of the family savings. The children at home cost a lot of money. If they spent 7 spirit stones to solve the pests, they would have a problem eating for the next period of time. "Thank you, Brother Lu." She finally decided to ask someone to get rid of the black budworm larvae. Her expression returned to normal, thanked Lu Xuan, and turned to leave. "Wait a minute." Lu Xuan called Xuan, waited for her to turn around, and said affirmatively, "Sister-in-law, I made rapid progress in a technique not long ago. Now I'm 70% to 80% sure that I can get rid of the black budworm larvae. Why don't you let me go and take a look first?" "Thank you, Brother Lu." Hearing Lu Xuan's words, Xuan's face flashed with a hint of surprise. She didn't expect Lu Xuan to help her for nothing, but it was obvious who would cost more, a cultivator at the 4th level of key training, or a cultivator at the 2nd level of key training. If Lu Xuan could solve it, the more money he could save, the better. Lu Xuan closed the courtyard door and followed Xuan with his head down. When he asked Zhang Hang's wife if she needed help, he had thought about it in his heart. After the white light ball appeared in the spiritual field, the first thing he had to avoid was putting himself in danger. This time, the Zhang family was not far next door, and he had to deal with black budworm larvae that did not cause much damage. Before, the adult black budworm was killed in one blow by the Zhengjin sword art. Now, I have a deeper cultivation and a deeper understanding of the sword art. I also have the fragments of the silver blade and many talismans in my hands. I think it will be no problem to deal with the larvae of the black budworm. Lu Xuan thought very steadily. In addition, there is another main reason. From the memory of the original body, I learned that he was able to successfully become a spiritual plant master with a lot of help from Zhang Hang. When he first entered the small spiritual field, Zhang Hang lent him some spiritual stones. After I took over this body, I also received some of his advice on how to cultivate spiritual plants. In addition, Zhang Ziyuan's child is quite cute, so I took this opportunity to see him. The 2 families are not far apart. Soon, Lu Xuan followed Xuan into her yard. Zhang Ziyuan was guarding the spiritual field. When he saw Lu Xuan coming in, a hint of joy appeared on his face. I don't know what he thought of, pouting his lips and turning his head away. "Zhang Ziyuan!" Xuan shouted sternly. "Hello, Uncle Lu." The child was somewhat afraid of his mother and shouted reluctantly, "Okay." Lu Xuan didn't care and came to the edge of Zhang's spiritual field. The spiritual field in the yard was nearly twice as large as his own spiritual field, and the types of spiritual plants planted were also richer. In addition to the firefly grass, there were 3 other common spiritual plants. He soon found the infected firefly grass. Turning it over, you can see that the thin black threads are tightly attached to the leaves, as if they are integrated with it. Lu Xuan's eyes were sharp, staring at the black threads. Then, he closed his eyes, flashed the essence of the Zhengjin sword art, and the spiritual power in his body was running, constantly compressing and condensing in the acupoints. In a moment, a golden sword energy as thin as a hair came instantly, and passed by the leaves closely, splitting a black thread in 2. After cutting off a black budworm larva, the remaining force of the golden sword energy was not dissipated, and it drew a beautiful arc, cutting another black thread in 2. Just like that, the black thin lines were broken into pieces, fell to the ground, bounced twice, and then stopped moving. Wow. Uncle Lu is so amazing. Zhang Xuan, who had come over at some point, squatted beside Lu Xuan and exclaimed loudly. Lu Xuan stood up, looking calm in Zhang Xuan's admiring eyes. It's just a black budworm larvae, not worth mentioning. Brother Lu, thank you for your hard work. Please come in and have a cup of hot tea. Seeing that the black budworm that had been bothering her was easily solved by Lu Xuan, Xuan showed a relaxed look on her face and invited Lu Xuan to come in. After sending Zhang Xuan to review the common sense of cultivation, Xuan took out 5 spirit stones from the inner room. Brother Lu, thank you so much this time. Please accept these spirit stones. Sister-in-law, this is not allowed. Brother Zhang helped me so much before. How can I still accept your spirit stones? Lu Xuan waved his hand and refused. Zhang Hang had done him a favor, and he knew that Xuan was a woman with a hard life with Zhang Xuan, so she naturally refused to accept the 5 spirit stones. No. You have helped me so much, I must accept it. It would only cost me more to ask someone else, and giving you only 5 spirit stones is already a great bargain. Xuan looked weak on the outside, but she was very strong-willed, and she insisted that Lu Xuan accept the spirit stones. Lu Xuan really couldn't refuse, and an idea flashed through his mind. How about this, sister-in-law? I still won't accept the spirit stones. You keep them for yourself, but I won't work for nothing. You can see if there are any unknown spirit seeds found in the wild at home. If there are, just give me one. He proposed a compromise. Zhang Hang often went to the wilderness. Maybe he had obtained some unknown spirit seeds. Unknown spirit seeds. There is one, but I don't know what kind, and the vitality is about to dry up. Xuan thought for a while and said. She entered the inner room and quickly took out a dried seed. The seed was like a small sword, with a grey-black surface, and it can be seen that it has been there for a long time. Your elder brother Zhang got to seeds by chance a long time ago. He asked some casual cultivators, but they didn't know what kind they were. He tried to plant one, but it didn't even sprout, so he had to give up. He wanted to sell the remaining spiritual seed, but he couldn't get anything precious in exchange, so he kept it at home. After keeping it for a long time, the vitality in the seed has been lost a lot. Then I won't be polite and take this spiritual seed. Lu Xuan looked over and over at the slender sword-like dry seed and said with a smile. After getting this dry spiritual seed, he didn't stay for long. In Xuan's gratitude and Zhang Xuan's reluctance, he left the Zhang family. Chapter 12 Sword Grass. After returning home, Lu Xuan took out the nearly dried spirit seed from his arms and looked at it carefully. The dried spirit seed was as slender as a sword and grey-black in color. Perhaps because it had lost a lot of vitality, its shape was slightly shriveled. Although Xuan had told Lu Xuan that she and Zhang Hang had planted another similar spirit seed before, but they had not succeeded, Lu Xuan was very confident. After all, as long as he successfully planted this dried spirit seed, he would be able to understand the subtle needs of the spirit seed through the real-time status, check for emissions, and make up for the deficiencies, and it is very likely that he would successfully cultivate it. Lu Xuan did what he thought of. He found a small open space in the spirit field and operated the earth attracting technique. A tiny crack appeared in the spirit soil, which was just enough to accommodate the dried spirit seed. After burying the dried spirit seed, Xuan continued to activate the earth attracting technique to gather the weak spiritual energy in the spirit field and converge it on the spirit seed. After absorbing several experience packs, the earth attracting technique has undergone a qualitative change. It can not only change the terrain in a local area, but also slightly attract the flow of spiritual power in the spirit field. After the weak spiritual power in the spiritual soil was integrated into the spiritual seed, Xuan's mind was somewhat nervous and focused on the dried spiritual seed. Or thought flashed through his mind. Sword grass, a second grade spiritual seed, is like a sword blade when it matures, sharp and tough, and is a natural material for refining flying swords. It feels like it is about to dry up. Let's have a heavy rain of spiritual energy to nourish it. After digesting this thought, Xuan was overjoyed. As expected, after planting this dried spiritual seed, he not only learned the information of the corresponding spiritual plant, but also understood the detailed needs of the spiritual seed. He immediately circulated the spiritual energy in his body, and misty water vapor instantly appeared above the dried spiritual seed, and then, strands of spiritual rain dripped down, and merged into the soil. The sword grass spiritual seed was thirsty and greedily absorbed the spiritual rain. After a round of spiritual rain, Xuan's spiritual consciousness explored the sword grass spiritual seed, and found that it was still dry. I want more. I want more. The more water the better. A mere second grade spirit seed. My third level key training base can't satisfy you? Xuan sneered. He was already extremely proficient in the spirit rain technique, and he almost instantly released another round of spirit rain. I want more. I want more. Xuan snorted coldly. Little guy, I'll moisten you to death. After 17 rounds of the spirit rain technique, Xuan gritted his teeth and circulated the spiritual energy in his body again. The spiritual energy surged above the sword grass spirit seed, and soon it disappeared without a drop of spiritual rain. No more. Really no more. He stood up shakily, feeling dizzy and seeing stars. This is a negative effect of excessive use of spiritual energy. Although his cultivation has been stabilized at the third level of key training, much deeper than before, no matter how much spiritual energy he has, he can't withstand such continuous use. His mind is focused on the sword grass spirit seed. I want more. I want more. Xuan shuddered and quickly moved away. However, the fine nourishment of the spirit rain technique was not without effect. He sensed that the sword grass spirit seed in the soil had become fuller and full of vitality. 2 days later, in addition to taking basic care of the other spiritual plants, Xuan focused on the second grade sword grass spirit seed. After performing the spirit rain technique for an unknown number of times, the immediate state of the spirit seed finally changed. Sword grass, a second grade spiritual plant, requires a certain amount of spiritual energy during the cultivation process. In addition, it also needs sword energy to nourish and stimulate growth from time to time. It needs sword energy to nourish. It is indeed a second grade spiritual plant. The requirements are obviously not at the same level. I guess the main reason why Brother Zhang and the others failed is this. After all, spiritual seeds are generally more delicate. Who would be so careless as to use sword energy to stimulate it? Xuan suddenly realized the reason why Zhang Hang and the others failed to plant, and was even more fortunate that he could grasp the immediate state of the spiritual plant at any time. As for sword energy, he had already made Zhengjin sword technique. With the spiritual power running in his body, Xuan controlled his mind and a fine golden sword energy nimbly emerged from his fingers, passed through the soil of the spiritual field, and hit the sword grass spirit seed. In an instant, Xuan seemed to hear a faint sword sound from the spirit seed in the soil. Then, the golden sword energy penetrated into the spirit seed, leaving a shallow golden line on the surface of the gray-black spirit seed. He followed the same method and sacrificed 3 more golden sword energies, leaving marks on the sword grass spirit seed. He stopped only after he realized that the sword energy was enough. Only after the golden lines on the spirit seed disappeared, new sword energy could be used to nourish the sword grass spirit seed. Finally, it was successfully planted and entered the growth stage. I don't know what kind of light bowl reward the second grade spiritual plant can bring. Xuan felt the subtle changes of the sword grass spirit seed through his spiritual consciousness and breathed a sigh of relief. He felt more and more the importance of mastering the real-time status of the spiritual plant. Perhaps we can go to the market town or the stalls of independent cultivators to find some unknown spiritual seeds. Although there are not many spiritual plants and seeds in the wild, they do exist. There is a certain probability of spiritual plants producing spiritual seeds after they mature naturally. They can also be taken from other cultivators and monsters, not to mention those strange secret realms. It is not surprising to see anything appear there. Perhaps other cultivators also have some unknown spiritual seeds. For them, it is difficult to evaluate the value and successfully plant them if the type of spiritual seeds is unknown. But I'm different. I know the conditions for planting spiritual seeds. As long as they can be met, the possibility of success is very high. In addition, I can get the reward of light balls. The more Xuan thought about it, the more he felt that this method was feasible. However, when he thought of the few spiritual stones left in his hands, he quickly calmed down. Purchasing unknown spiritual seeds is a gamble after all. Although I have a higher chance of winning, I cannot say that I will win for sure. More importantly, I do not have enough spiritual stones to go for it. After all, buying wild spiritual seeds is not sure whether they can be planted. Secondly, I do not know what grade they are. It is okay to buy first or second grade ones, but if I buy low grade ones, I may even lose money. Let's wait for the return of the group of cultivators who have reclaimed the secret realm led by Brother Zhang. The grade of spiritual seeds produced in the secret realm is more guaranteed, and at the same time, the number and variety of spiritual seeds in circulation will be greater. Xuan remembered that when he strolled around the market on weekdays, he rarely saw stalls selling wild spiritual seeds. Even if there were, they were basically species familiar to cultivators, and there was almost no trace of unknown spiritual seeds. He decided to let nature take its course, accumulate more knowledge about spiritual plants, pay more attention to the market, and if he found any unknown spiritual seeds, and had enough spiritual stones, he would try to buy them. The spiritual plants in the yard were more important at the moment. The 20 firefly grasses were growing very well. Their leaves were lazily stretched out under the nourishment of the spiritual rain. The dots of fluorescence were shining like stars under the reflection of the sunlight. The red cloud pine grew another 2 inches taller. The fine red needles on the tree became more dense. Under the stimulation of the fireball technique, it looked like a hedgehog covered with red thorns. The eclipse moon fruit had entered a stage of rapid maturity. Chapter 13 Uncle Lou, do you want the spirit stone? The newly ripened eclipse moon fruits were twice as many as the first batch, a total of 8. All 8 eclipse moon fruits were of good quality. Xuan carefully placed them in a specific container and picked up the 8 white light balls that appeared one by one with great expectation. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and obtain the first grade magic weapon silver blade, fragment, ****. 5. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and obtain the first grade talisman sword key talisman. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and obtain the first grade elixir Pei Yuan Dan. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and obtain the first grade talisman explosion flame talisman. The 8 light balls were rewards, 5 of which were the first grade magic weapon silver blade fragments, 2 of which gave 2 first grade talismans, and 1 of which gave a first grade elixir. Peking Yuan Dan, a first grade elixir, can quickly replenish spiritual power after a cultivator takes it. Xuan carefully put away the first grade Pei Yuan Dan. He had heard of this kind of elixir, but it was the first time he had it. It was extremely useful for low-level and mid-level cultivators who practiced Qi, and it was worth a lot of spirit stones. There are more and more fragments of this cracked silver blade, 8 of them already. Xuan looked at the 8 thin silver fragments flying around him, feeling somewhat helpless. Suddenly, his mind moved, and the 8 fragments instantly came together, the edges tightly fitting together, forming a strange thing. Why does it feel like a silver sword blade, but with a lot of gaps? The more Xuan looked at it, the more he felt that this thing had the shape of a sword blade. If it is a sword blade, does it mean that when it is combined, it can be used as a separate magic weapon, confusing the opponent during the battle, and suddenly split into many thin pieces, unexpectedly? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was very high, and he was looking forward to the moment when all the fragments were successfully collected. There were still 30 eclipse moon fruits left. According to the probability of fragments appearing and the size of the gaps in the broken sword blade, it should not be a big problem. But when he thought of the experience of drawing cards in his previous life, he could not be optimistic again. Uncle Lu, do you want the spirit stone? Just as Lu Xuan was worried, he heard the familiar mischievous voice of Zhang Ziyuan outside the yard. Lu Xuan quickly opened the gate. What's up? You still have spirit stones for me? I don't have any spirit stones for you, but I have an opportunity to help you earn some. The chubby Zhang Ziyuan laughed, with a cunning look in his eyes that didn't match his age. Oh, come and see. Lu Xuan looked at Zhang Ziyuan, who was holding the straw puppet tightly, and felt a little curious. Didn't you help my family solve the insect problem a few days ago? Just today, I heard Kabin say that there were also those strange insects in his house. I told him that you have great skills, and he hurried back to tell his parents and ask me to take you to his house to help. His father is so worried about this problem. As long as you, little Uncle Lu, do like last time, you can earn a lot of spirit stones. Kabin. In his memory, he was a child like a skinny monkey who often played with Zhang Ziyuan. His home was 2 or 3 miles away from his yard. Lu Xuan had met his father Kei, a casual cultivator at the 3rd level of key training. They just knew each other and didn't have much contact. Should I go and have a look? He hesitated, wondering whether he should earn this spiritual stone. Risk. The main thing is to deal with the black budworms. With the increasingly skilled Zhengjin sword art, it can be easily solved. There is also a very low possibility of conflict. However, with his 3rd level key training, plus the Zhengjin sword art, various talismans, and the fragments of the silver blade magic weapon, he can basically deal with various unexpected situations. Profit? Kinming, who is at the 4th level of key training, charges 7 spiritual stones for clearing the black budworm larvae. Although I only show the 2nd level key training, it is not too much to charge 5 spiritual stones, right? The most important thing is that I'm too poor now. There is a huge demand for spiritual stones. The area of the spiritual field is too small. After planting these spiritual plants, there is almost no space. Lu Xuan really wants to have a larger spiritual field. He also wants to buy a storage bag. As the number of treasures in his hands increases, it is impossible to carry it with him every time he goes out. Purchasing unknown spiritual seeds also requires a large amount of spiritual stones. Thinking of this, Lu Xuan no longer hesitated and nodded gently in Zhang Ziyuan's expectant eyes. Lead the way. Okay. Kei's courtyard. Kei's wife Li was scolding her son. I wonder what you were thinking. You actually asked a teenage casual cultivator to solve the pest problem at home. Do you think this is just a kid playing house? Kabin, who was only 6 or 7 years old, blushed when his mother scolded him. He mustered up the courage to reply. But Ziyuan said that his Uncle Lu was very powerful. He had superb swordsmanship and killed all the evil insects in one go. Do you believe everything he says? You don't even need to use your pig brain to think about it. How powerful can a 2nd level key training casual cultivator be? Li turned around and said to her husband Kei, who was looking down at the ground beside her, "Boss, I think we should call my younger brother over. He has some connections. He knows a mid-level key training cultivator who can solve the pest problem. He must be more reliable than the 2nd level key training casual cultivator that the little bastard mentioned." Hey, the so-called brother-in-law who asked for 10 spirit stones? The skinny Kei sneered. You've come to your brother-in-law to kill the familiar. How about you pay for these 10 spirit stones? Li's lips stammered a few times. I'm just worried about the spirit plants at home. Ah. Kei sighed. At this point, we can only try that young casual cultivator. I just went out to ask. Zhang Hang's family had an insect infestation before. I heard that it was solved by a teenager. I think it must be the person Kabin mentioned. Kei squatted down and looked at the spirit plants tightly wrapped by black thin lines. A trace of worry flashed in his eyes. Other cultivators who can solve the insect infestation all ask for a high price. For him now, it is undoubtedly a big burden. He can only put his hope on Lu Xuan, who is at the 2nd level of key training. At this time, there was a knocking sound from the courtyard door. Although Lu Xuan heard some disputes outside, he thought that, since he was here, he would make a fortune by earning spirit stones, so he asked Zhang Ziyuan to knock heavily on the courtyard door. The courtyard door opened. Kei forced a smile on his thin face and greeted him. Dao Lu, thank you for your hard work. I heard that you have a unique skill in dealing with pests. I will trouble you to help me look after the spiritual plants at home later. I can't say that I have a unique skill, but I have made great progress in a certain technique recently, and it happens to restrain the black budworm larvae. Lu Xuan explained and continued. I will do my best to help Dao deal with the pests later, but I have one thing to say in advance. The price I will offer is 5 spiritual stones, no bargaining. The 4th level key training only needs 7 spiritual stones. Why do you, a 2nd level key training, want 5 spiritual stones? Lee interrupted. It's also dealing with pests. Why don't you ask the cultivator at the middle level of key training? Lu Xuan responded coldly. Lee naturally wouldn't do that. After a pause, he said, 5 spiritual stones are not impossible, but what if the pests are not dealt with? Get back to the house. Kei shouted at Lee in a low voice. Shrew, sorry to make you laugh. He turned around and smiled bitterly. Whether you can get rid of the pests, I will give you 5 spirit stones. I just hope you can do your best. After all, you are both spirit plant masters, and you know that spirit plants are everything to us. Of course. Lu Xuan said solemnly. He didn't care about what Lee, the bad guy, said. As long as he could get the spirit stones, it would be fine. He came to the invaded spirit plants, and with a calm mind, a golden sword energy as thin as a hair emerged nimbly, rushing towards the black budworm larvae with unparalleled sword intent. After a few breaths, all the black budworm larvae were cut off by the golden sword energy, and fell to the ground one by one. Fortunately, I have fulfilled my mission. He stood up, and said to Kei, who was nervous. Behind his back, Zhang Ziyuan secretly raised an eyebrow at his friend. Look how powerful my Uncle Lu is. Thank you, fellow Daoist Lu. Thank you, fellow Daoist Lu. Kei showed a relieved look on his face. Not far away, the window of the house suddenly fell down, and faint sobbing could be heard. Lu Xuan collected the remuneration paid by Kei, and walked out with Zhang Ziyuan. He weighed the spirit stone in his hand, feeling the heaviness it brought, and suddenly asked, Ziyuan, how about we cooperate? You go to the nearby monks who are suffering from insect infestation, and I will come forward to solve the problem. For each time I take action, I will give you 30 broken spirits. How about it? Uncle Lu, you helped my family so much last time. I will just help you find it directly. No need for broken spirits. Zhang Ziyuan said innocently. No, I can't let you work in vain. So it's decided. Chapter 14 Return. Lu Xuan said firmly, not allowing Zhang Ziyuan to refute. He didn't want to spend a lot of time looking for independent spiritual plant masters who were infested by insects, so he gave this task to Zhang Ziyuan, and gave him a little reward. Zhang Ziyuan had no choice but to accept it. When he thought that he could earn 30 broken spirits by finding a cultivator who was infested by monster insects, he couldn't help but feel happy and his imagination ran wild. But some places must be agreed upon. The cultivators I find can only be limited to the northern area, and I can only help 3 independent spiritual plant masters solve the pests a day at most. Lu Xuan added. His main focus at present is on the spiritual plants in his own yard. If the spiritual plants cannot grow in the best state, because of greed for that little spiritual stone, it will not be worth the loss. He still has a clear distinction between the primary and the secondary. There is another factor. He is only showing the 2nd level of key training now. If he frequently activates the Zhengjin sword art, it will easily expose his true cultivation. In the next 10 days, Zhang Ziyuan tried hard to find it, and Lu Xuan went out almost every day to help solve the pests. As the pests became more and more serious and there was a possibility of repeated attacks, he had to use the Zhengjin sword art 3 times almost every time he went out. Every time he made a move, he gave Zhang Ziyuan 30 broken spirits, and he could get 4 spirit stones and 70 broken spirits. In more than 10 days, plus the previous accumulation, Lu Xuan now has a net worth of about 200 spirit stones. During this period, the owner of the yard came to collect the rent once and paid 30 spirit stones. In addition, 11 eclipse moon fruits were harvested, and there were 19 left. All of them were of good quality, including 5 fragments of the cracked silver blade, 3 first grade Puan pills, and 3 first grade talismans. With the addition of these 5 fragments, the incomplete cracked silver blade looked slightly more complete, with only a few relatively small gaps. Because the storage conditions of the eclipse moon fruit were simpler, Xuan was not in a hurry to sell it, but collected them together and sold them to manager He of Baikao Tang after they were all ripe. In addition to the eclipse moon tree, which is about to mature, the other 3 spiritual plants in the spiritual field are growing very well. The growth cycle of the firefly grass is already halfway through, and it will take more than a month before it can be harvested again. The changes in the red cloud pine are not very big, but it has obviously grown a little taller. As for the sword grass, under the stimulation and nourishment of the golden sword energy of the Jengjin sword art every day, it slowly grows a thin black grass like a sharp sword. Standing straight, the tip of the grass points directly to the sky, and there is a faint sword intent lingering around the grass leaves. Come on, divide the spirit stones. This is your reward for today. On the bluestone path, Xuan took out 90 broken spirits and handed them to Zhang Xuan. Thank you, Uncle Lu. Zhang Xuan smiled innocently, took the broken spirits with familiar movements, and carefully stuffed them into his clothes. The 2 of them had just visited 3 independent cultivators today, and Xuan had successfully solved them. Now is the time to divide the profits. They are back. The first batch of cultivators who reclaimed the secret realm are back. There was a sudden commotion not far ahead. Xuan vaguely heard a few words. It seemed that the first batch of cultivators who went to the wilderness organized by the Xuan family last time returned today. He had not been to the wilderness where opportunities and risks coexisted. He was also somewhat curious about the new secret realm, so he took Zhang Xuan to go over. I heard that the new secret realm has several layers of powerful formations for protection. The formation master of the Xuan family successfully broke through 2 formations and found many rare spiritual plants, natural treasures, and even high-grade magic tools and techniques. Fuck, I'm so jealous. I regret not signing up to go with them. If I went, I might get a great opportunity and rise to prominence from then on. It's possible to become a foundation building or even a giant cultivator. That's right, I wish I could replace them. Everyone talked about it, and they were all jealous of the huge gains of the cultivators who came back from the secret realm. Xuan's heart was calm. It was inevitable that there would be huge gains in the secret realm. Otherwise, the Xuan family, a big family in Linyang Market, would not have organized so many cultivators and spent manpower and material resources to open up the land. However, the bulk of the profits would also be occupied by the Xuan family, and the rest would be divided up by some powerful cultivators. As for the largest number of independent cultivators, it would be good enough to get some leftovers. It is even unknown how many people will not only not get any benefits, but also lose their lives and die. Zhang Xuan, who was standing aside, heard the cultivators' discussion and missed his father who he had not seen for a long time. He was nervous and anxious. He greeted Xuan and ran home like a fly. Xuan walked on the path home without hurrying. The news that the cultivators who opened up the new secret realm had returned spread rapidly. The entire northern area of the market seemed to be ignited in an instant, and the air was filled with a sense of restlessness. When passing by a courtyard of independent cultivators, Xuan heard several mournful wails. Through the open gate, he saw a tired-looking casual cultivator holding an urn, and a woman in front of him was crying and grief-stricken. Xuan was quite familiar with this casual cultivator family. The male owner was a middle-aged cultivator named Xuan, who was at the 3rd level of key training and signed up to participate in this secret land reclamation. The ending was self-evident. He didn't know how many times he had seen or heard such scenes along the way. The road of cultivation is long and difficult. If ordinary cultivators want to go further, they can only try their best to seize every possible opportunity. Even if they will die, if they are not careful, they must try their best to fight for it. It's difficult to cultivate. It's difficult to cultivate. Fortunately, I have that special spiritual field, so I don't have to fight for a little unknown opportunity. I can just farm peacefully. Lu Xuan was even more grateful that he had that special white light ball, and he was determined not to go out and take risks easily. In the next few days, he stayed quietly at home and cultivated spiritual plants. Zhang Ziyuan hadn't come to see him these days. Lu Xuan knew that he was worried about his father. He looked listless when he saw him occasionally. Although Xuan seemed to be calm on the surface, her thin face revealed her inner feelings. Dad. One afternoon, Lu Xuan, who was watering the spiritual plants in the yard with the spirit rain technique, heard a surprised shout. He smiled and opened the gate. Sure enough, Zhang Hong, with his clothes disheveled and dusty, strode towards home. His arms were bulging, and his face was wrinkled with smiles. It can be seen that he had gained a lot. Seeing Lu Xuan, he nodded from a distance and smiled. Lu Xuan smiled in response, watching Zhang Hong hug his wife and children, and enter the house with a happy smile. He didn't go over to join in the fun. Zhang Hong came back from the wilderness with the harvest from the secret realm. Now he was at the most sensitive moment. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was in a state of panic and had a suspicion of snakes in his cups. Although the two of them trusted each other very much, if he went over Ashley now, it might cause unnecessary suspicion and resistance. Half a day later, Zhang Hong came to the door himself. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Dark Marrow Ganoderma. Brother Lu, long time no see, how are you these days? Zhang Hong smiled and greeted Lu Xuan. Thank you for your concern, Brother Zhang. Everything went well. I want to congratulate you for returning safely from the wilderness, Lu Xuan said with a smile. Haha, I'm lucky. I only got a little hurt and got some treasures by chance. I have to thank you, Brother Lu, for coming here this time. I heard from my wife that there was an insect infestation at home before, and it was all thanks to you, Brother Lu, who helped to solve it. And that little bastard, he kept showing off to me after he came back, saying that he can earn spirit stones now, and he also wants to use the spirit stones he earns to support his family. Zhang Hong thought of Zhang Ziyuan's smug look and laughed. Brother Zhang, you don't have to be polite. You helped me so much before. What I did is nothing. As for Xuan, he saved me a lot of time and unnecessary trouble. It's only right to give him a little reward. He's just a kid. What can he do? Brother Lu, you surprised me this time. I thought you could only farm peacefully. I didn't expect that you could have such a sword skill. With it, Brother Lu, you can beat many cultivators at the 3rd level of key training. Zhang Hong praised. With the cover of the breath retaining method, Lu Xuan was not worried that Zhang Hong could detect his true cultivation level. The spiritual fields in my courtyard were the first to encounter insect pests. It cost me nearly 7 spiritual stones and I hired a mid-level key training cultivator to get rid of them. In order to prevent this from happening again, I simply spent a lot of money and bought a first-grade sword technique. I didn't expect that. Although my spiritual power cultivation progressed slowly, I had some talent in practicing sword techniques. The sword technique progressed very quickly, even to the point where it could help people get rid of insect pests. I wanted to earn some spiritual stones from it and make back the cost of buying it as soon as possible. Lu Xuan made up a reason to explain the ins and outs of how he could use the Zhengjin sword technique to solve the pests. Zhang Hong didn't doubt it. The two talked for a while and naturally talked about Zhang Hong's experience in reclaiming the secret realm this time. The Wang family's formation master broke 2 formations. According to those mid-level key training cultivators who entered the depths of the secret realm, the area of this new secret realm is not smaller than Linyang Market, and there are countless spiritual plants and medicines inside. We, the 2nd and 3rd level key training cultivators, only move around on the periphery. We don't have the ability or qualifications to enter the deeper part of the secret realm. I mainly follow a team of cultivators to collect spiritual plants and clear out some low-level monsters. Although there are great cultivators from the Wang family standing in the front, it is said that the casualties are still not small, about 30%. Our team was lucky enough, but we encountered 2 dangerous situations. One time, when we were collecting spiritual plants, we encountered an alienated spiritual plant that was extremely aggressive and good at camouflage. 2 people were accidentally killed. Another time, we encountered a special monster, a spider with a human face on its back. It was extremely fast and its figure could not be seen at all. A cultivator was directly cut in 2 by its limbs. Fortunately, a high-level key training cultivator arrived in time and eliminated it. Thinking of these 2 encounters, Zhang Hang's face turned pale, and he looked like he was still in fear, which showed that he had been traumatized. Lu Xuan, who was standing by, was listening with great interest. He didn't have to experience it himself, and it was good to satisfy his curiosity. Why, Brother Lu, are you interested in going for a walk? The first time you open up a new secret realm, the benefits are the greatest, and the risks are also the greatest. Later on, they will all be reduced. Of course, it's just the outer part of the secret realm. I don't know what's going on inside. Seeing Lu Xuan's interest, Zhang Hang smiled and invited him. No, my cultivation is low. I'm not good at fighting, and I don't have any magic tools and talismans. I'd better be a spiritual plant master, he said with a smile. The spiritual power accumulated by the white light ball, and the magic tools, talismans, and elixirs it brought, were still too few. If you round it off, it can be said to be nothing. Zhang Hang just mentioned it casually and skipped it. By the way, Brother Zhang, did you harvest any unknown wild spiritual seeds during your visit to the wilderness secret realm this time? If so, I can buy them with spiritual stones. Lu Xuan changed the subject and asked, unknown wild spiritual seeds. Wild spiritual seeds are rare, and unknown species are even rarer. I haven't encountered them myself, but I heard that a casual cultivator found a wild spiritual seed in a deserted place in the secret realm. I'll ask for you then. However, the species of that spiritual seed is unknown, and the planting method is unknown. If you want to plant it, it's very risky, and you may waste time and spiritual stones in vain. Zhang Han couldn't help but persuade Lu Xuan when he heard Lu Xuan's question. I just want to try it, not to gamble on the possibility of success. If it fails, you can also accumulate some experience in cultivating spiritual plants and broaden your horizons. Lu Xuan found an excuse to evade the question. Okay, I'll ask for you. Zhang Han nodded and said. He was very efficient, and 2 days later, he brought good news. In the Zhang family yard, he introduced a bald cultivator who was at the 3rd level of key training to Lu Xuan. This is fellow Daoist Long. You are very powerful. This is Brother Lu. He has some talent in growing spiritual plants, and he wants to know about the unknown spiritual seed in your hand. Zhang Hang introduced Lu Xuan and the bald monk to each other, and quickly got to the point. I found this spiritual seed from a barren land outside the secret realm. At that time, more than 10 wild spiritual seeds were found, and the steward of the Xuan family rewarded me with one. It's just that I haven't figured out what kind it is, but judging from the place where it was found, it should be no less than the 1st grade. If Brother Lu wants it, take 5 spiritual stones. The bald monk said directly. Lu Xuan took the spiritual seed in his hand and looked at it carefully. The shape of the spiritual seed is like a small fungus, dark red, with blood vessels on the surface, and a viscous substance flowing slightly. 5 spirit stones. The price is not expensive. This is the price when I got the red cloud pine. However, looking at the strangeness of this spirit seed, its grade and rarity must be no less than the red cloud pine. If we know what kind it is, the price must be much higher than the red cloud pine. Lu Xuan thought to himself, and made a decision quickly. Fellow Daoist Long, I want this spirit seed. Brother Lu is straightforward. The 2 exchanged spirit stones in one hand and spirit seeds in the other, each with a smile. The bald monk was happy that an unknown wild spirit seed could bring him 5 spirit stones, while Lu Xuan was happy because there would be another rare spirit plant in the spirit field. And more importantly, the white light ball brought by the mature spirit plant. When he returned home, he used the earth-inducing technique to clear a small piece of spirit field and planted the dark red fungus. With his mind focused, detailed information about the spirit plant flashed through his mind. Dark Marrow Ganoderma, a 2nd grade spiritual plant, can be used to refine certain body refining pills when mature, or it can be taken directly to strengthen the cultivator's physique. A spiritual plant that grows in the dark. It does not need light or spiritual rain. It just wants to stay in the shade, accompanied by decaying spiritual trees. Chapter 16. Pill Recipe. It seems that this dark marrow Ganoderma does not like light, and its growth environment also requires decayed spiritual wood. Lu Xuan judged, based on the prompts that appeared in his mind. It's quite simple to dislike light, although it is not easy to move it into the house due to the spiritual field and spiritual soil. We can build a simple shed for it to block the light, but it's hard to find decayed spiritual wood. Spiritual wood is quite common, but who has that kind of decayed spiritual wood at home? Lu Xuan thought in his heart while taking out tools from home and building a simple wooden shed around the dark marrow Ganoderma. After all, it is a second-grade spiritual plant. The sooner it is planted, the sooner it can be harvested. He did not delay any longer and decided to go out and look for it first. He walked all the way to the center of the town, and half a minute later, he came to a huge courtyard. Looking over the stone wall, you can vaguely see dense and tall spiritual trees planted inside. The owner of the courtyard is a cultivator named Xuan, who has the cultivation level of the 3rd level of key training. Lu Xuan had only heard of him before and rarely had the opportunity to deal with him. It is said that this monk surnamed Xuan has a close relationship with a high-level cultivator in the center of the town, so he can occupy such a large courtyard and plant so many spiritual trees. Decayed spiritual trees are either encountered by insects during the planting process, or stored for too long, or without good storage conditions, which causes the nature of the spiritual wood to change and decay. This monk surnamed Xuan planted a large number of spiritual trees, and it is possible that he has rotten wood at home. He walked forward, and a young monk came out to greet him. Lu Xuan stated his purpose, and the young monk took him to the monk surnamed Xuan. The young man walked up to his father, the monk surnamed Xuan, and whispered a few words. "My name is Xuan. May I know what your name is?" Lu Xuan. "Dear Daoist Lu, I heard from my son that Daoist you want to ask if there are any decayed spiritual trees in my home. What can you do for them?" To be honest, Senior Xuan, I have some experience in cultivating spiritual plants recently. I want to find the decayed ones to verify a hypothesis. I heard that Senior Xuan has a very high level in cultivating spiritual trees, so I want to come and try to see if there are any decayed trees. Lu Xuan replied half truthfully. "I see." Xuan nodded, his expression unchanged, and it was unclear whether he believed it or not. Due to various factors, there are indeed a few decayed spiritual trees in my home. Xuan told his son a few words, and took out a few spiritual trees from the warehouse behind the yard. The spiritual trees were tattered on the outside, and exuded a decayed and unpleasant smell. "If you want it, Brother Lu, take it. It's just that planting spiritual wood requires more manpower and material resources than planting ordinary spiritual plants. Even if these spiritual woods have decayed, they still have some value. 2 spiritual stones. Brother Lu can take these 3 spiritual woods away." Lu Xuan frowned. Since the spiritual wood has decayed, it means that it has lost its original purpose. It's a bit unfair to still need 2 spiritual stones for 3 useless pieces of waste wood. He knew that the other party didn't know the real purpose of the decayed spiritual wood he wanted. With this information gap, Lu Xuan was full of confidence. 1 spiritual stone. Just consider it as me helping you, Brother Xuan, to deal with the waste wood. Xuan originally just wanted to test Lu Xuan's bottom line. Seeing his attitude, he didn't insist, and nodded in agreement. These abandoned spiritual woods are usually buried in an uninhabited place outside the market after a certain number of them are found. It is already quite good to be able to exchange for 1 spiritual stone. The two reached an agreement. After Lu Xuan handed over the spiritual stones, he took the 3 abandoned spiritual woods back home. In the yard, under the shelter of a simple wooden shed, the dark red mushroom seemed to be blending into the shadows. Lu Xuan hurriedly took out 3 pieces of rotten wood and carefully placed them around the dark marrow spirit seed. When he came back from performing a round of spiritual rain, he had already discovered that the dark marrow spirit seed had undergone significant changes. The root and stem of the mushroom, perhaps attracted by the special smell of the rotten spiritual wood, quietly bred many tiny dark red hyphae. The dark red hyphae spread into the rotten wood, and Lu Xuan seemed to feel that the color of the dark marrow ganoderma became deeper, and the flow of the viscous liquid in the blood vessel-like channel inside accelerated by 2 points. After successfully planting the dark marrow ganoderma, Lu Xuan finally felt relieved. In the next period of time, he basically stayed at home, and most of the time was spent on carefully cultivating spiritual plants. The rest of the time was spent on practicing skills and techniques, and familiarizing himself with the use of the still incomplete silver breaking blade. In the middle, he also went to the casual cultivator market twice to see if he could find 1 or 2 unknown spirit seeds at the stalls, while the casual cultivators who had reclaimed the secret realm came back. Unfortunately, the stalls selling spiritual seeds that Lu Xuan was familiar with were all common spiritual seeds. The spiritual field in the yard was so small that it was already packed with people. There was no room for other spiritual plants. 20 spiritual fireflies were entering a rapid growth stage, and 2 eclipse moon trees had more than half of their eclipse moon fruits ripe. A first-grade red cloud pine did not require a high spiritual environment, and only needed to be stimulated by fireballs from time to time. A second-grade swordgrass required the Jengjin sword technique and the spiritual rain technique, and a second-grade dark marrow ganoderma, whose nutrients mainly came from rotten spiritual wood, did not require Lu Xuan to use the spiritual rain technique to nourish it. It was enough to use the spiritual rain technique and the earth-inducing technique to keep the rotten wood in a rotten state. Looking at it this way, Lu Xuan found that there were the fewest first-grade spiritual plants in the spiritual field. Only 1 red cloud pine, and the 2 spiritual seeds he found brought him unexpected surprises, both of which were second-grade spiritual plants. During this period, he harvested 5 eclipse moon fruits. 4 were of good quality and 1 was of superior quality. Of the 5 white light balls he brought, 2 were fragments of the silver blade. This way, the magic weapon silver blade was more complete, with only a few small gaps. With the remaining 14 eclipse moon fruits, Lu Xuan estimated that there would be no problem. There were also 2 first-grade talismans, the sword key talisman and the exorcist talisman, both of which were considered quite good among talismans of this grade. As for the top quality eclipse moon fruit, after Lu Xuan absorbed it, a stream of information appeared in his mind. The recipe for the Peiyuan pill records the materials and techniques for refining the first-grade Peiyuan pill. It's actually a recipe worthy of being a top-quality eclipse moon fruit. Lu Xuan was a little surprised. The pills that came out of the white light ball several times before were all Peiyuan pills, but this time the recipe was directly revealed. Well, it's better to teach a man how to fish than to give him a fish. It seems that I have to spend some time learning how to refine pills. Lu Xuan thought secretly. But I don't have any foundation before, and the probability of failure is high if I start refining pills from scratch. I don't know if this eclipse moon fruit will produce the recipe for the Peiyuan pill. If there is a recipe, will it be like the previous earth attraction technique and Jengjin sword technique, which automatically increase the alchemy experience after repeated absorption? Lu Xuan thought optimistically as he looked at the dozen or so round and plump eclipse moon fruits hanging among the lush leaves. Chapter 17 Cooperation. When each spiritual plant matures, different things will appear in the white light ball. After the experience of harvesting 2 different spiritual plants, Lu Xuan gradually discovered some rules. When the firefly grass matures, the light bowl contains several months of cultivation, low-grade magic, and first-grade talismans, while the eclipse moon fruit mainly produces fragments of magic tools, elixirs, talismans, and elixir recipes with a relatively low probability. Maybe I can adjust the types of spiritual plants according to my needs in the future. However, the most urgent problem to be solved now is to change to a spiritual field with a larger area, richer spiritual energy, and a more complex environment as soon as possible to grow various types of spiritual plants. Secondly, I urgently need a storage bag. After all, my wealth is getting richer and richer, and I have more and more talismans and elixirs on me. I can't carry them in my arms every time I go out. Thinking of this, Lu Xuan looked at the 28 eclipse moon fruits piled up in the house and decided to sell them in exchange for spiritual stones. He packed them in a cloth bag and rushed directly to his destination, Baikao Tang, without stopping on the way. In the room, filled with the strong aroma of medicine. Steward, he saw Lu Xuan and the bulging cloth bag he was carrying. "Lu kid, I haven't seen you for a while. What other spiritual plants have matured? 2 eclipse moon trees have entered the mature stage. I picked some fruits to visit you," Lu Xuan said with a smile. "You are not visiting me, but you are visiting the spiritual stones in Baikao Tang, right?" the thin old man said with a smile. "Take out your treasures for me to see." Lu Xuan put the cloth bag on the wooden cabinet. 28 eclipse moon fruits, one of which is of top quality, and the rest are of good quality. "Almost all of them are of good quality? Have you come to your senses?" Steward, he said in surprise. Although there were also plants of good and top quality in the spiritual firefly grass that Lu Xuan brought over before, there were also many plants of ordinary quality. But this time, all of them were of good quality or above, which surprised him. Indeed, all of them are of good quality or above. He checked each eclipse moon fruit one by one, judging its quality by the size and roundness of the fruit. When a man has been away for 3 days, he should be looked at with new eyes. The thin old man looked at Lu Xuan and sighed. He still remembered that when this teenager first entered Baikao Tang, he took out a few ordinary Lingyiang grass and said he wanted to sell them to Baikao Tang. Baikao Tang had its own stable supply channels and generally did not accept spiritual plants from such small casual cultivators, but when he saw the boy's resolute and stubborn face at that time, the old man felt sympathy and agreed to the boy's request to sell. Now, the boy has become a spiritual plant master who can grow high quality spiritual medicines at any time. The thin old man was full of emotion for a while, but the boy's next words brought him back to reality. "Manager he, what are you staring at? Are you thinking about how to take advantage of me, you kid?" Manager he laughed and scolded. "A good quality eclipse moon fruit costs 10 spiritual stones, and a top quality one costs 20 spiritual stones more. Okay." Lu Xuan had compared the prices at other drugstores and knew that this was a fair price, so he readily agreed. The price of eclipse moon fruit was much lower than that of firefly grass, but a eclipse moon tree could produce more than 20 fruits, so its value was still much higher than firefly grass. Manager he handed a total of 32 low-grade spiritual stones to Lu Xuan and asked curiously, "Lu, tell me the truth, have you improved your cultivation skills? You can't just get so many good quality spiritual fruits by luck." "It has indeed improved. But this is also the result of a lot of sacrifices. I just spend the time that other cultivators spend on cultivating and exploring secret realms on cultivating spiritual plants. In order to cultivate higher quality spiritual plants, I have completely given up the naive idea of becoming a powerful cultivator. Now, I just want to cultivate spiritual plants well and live a peaceful and ordinary life as a spiritual plant master." Lu Xuan's eyes were empty, trying to maintain his persona as an ordinary spiritual plant master. It's good to have such an idea. At least it's relatively safe. You don't have to fight with others for that little chance. Maybe you can live longer than them. Moreover, if you keep this kind of progress, you can also gain a very high status with your identity as a spiritual plant master. The thin old man empathized with Lu Xuan and comforted him. He paused and continued. "I told you before, if you always have this level of planting skills, I will give you an opportunity. You also know that there is an alchemist in Baikao Tang. His alchemy level is one of the best in the whole Linyang market, and he has many alchemy boys under him. So, there is a great demand for various elixir materials, and there are also several large spiritual fields, which employ spiritual plant masters, to specialize in planting related spiritual medicines. Although my status is not high, I can still have a say in Baikao Tang, and I can recommend you to cooperate with Baikao Tang." "How do you cooperate?" Lu Xuan asked curiously. "Generally there are 2 types. The first type is to directly hire a spiritual plant master to plant spiritual medicine for Baikao Tang. The ownership of the spiritual medicine planted belongs to Baikao Tang, and the spiritual plant master is given a certain amount of remuneration. The better the quality of the spiritual medicine planted, the more rewards will be given. This cooperation model can provide you with a more stable planting environment, allowing you to concentrate on cultivation without worrying about other things." The second type is much simpler. We will sell spiritual seeds to spiritual plant masters who want to cooperate at a low price, and at the same time, agree that when the spiritual plants mature, Baekyeotang has the right to purchase them first, and the risks and benefits are borne by the spiritual plant masters alone. Of course, this priority will not be abused. If the price is too different from that of other purchasers, the spiritual plant master can make his own choice. Lu Xuan nodded. Both cooperation methods have their pros and cons. The first type is more stable. Both the safety of oneself and the spiritual plants in the spiritual field are guaranteed, but it is relatively less free. The second type is more risky and the benefits may be greater. If I'm really an ordinary spiritual plant master who is content with mediocrity, of course the first type is more secure. But Lu Xuan never liked being bound, and because of the white light ball in the spiritual field, it was particularly important for him to have free space. Manager I'm used to being lazy, and not used to being controlled by others, so if we really want to cooperate, then I will choose the second option. Lu Xuan just wanted someone to provide him with spiritual seeds. Okay, then I will report to the higher-ups. After it is confirmed, I will notify you when you come over. Okay, thank you very much, Manager Lu Xuan bowed to the thin old man and said gratefully. He could clearly feel the old man's kindness to him, and kept it in his heart. In this case, the most urgent thing is to have a bigger and better spiritual field. This idea in his mind became clearer and more urgent. Chapter 18 Threats, Seeking Follow-up Reading. Brother Lu, what do you think of this spiritual field? In the spacious courtyard, Lu Xuan walked slowly, carefully observing the surroundings. A young cultivator with a scar on his face, who was at the first level of key training, followed him closely. The young man bent slightly and squeezed out a very enthusiastic smile. The owner of this courtyard was once a mid-level cultivator of key training. He went out to explore and did not come back for a long time. He was mortgaged by his descendants, and our brokerage took it for rent. The spiritual field in front of us is nearly 1 acre, with rich spiritual energy. The courtyard is located next to the market for casual cultivators, and there are guards patrolling in the market, so the safety can be greatly guaranteed. And the chicken coop in front, the previous owner drew the runes of dust removal, stability, and sound insulation, which is suitable for raising some spiritual beasts and birds. It's really good, but I still need to think about it, Lu Xuan said calmly. In the past few days, he took out some time to look at several spiritual fields through brokers. The area of these spiritual fields is several times or more than 10 times that of his current spiritual fields, and the spiritual energy is much richer, and there are various conveniences. There is also a courtyard. Not only the spiritual field area is more than 1 mu, but there is also a spiritual spring inside. This made Lu Xuan very excited, but after asking about the rent, he was soon brought back to reality. Among the spiritual fields he looked at, even the cheapest one rented for 40 spiritual stones a month, and the one with a spiritual spring even cost 60 spiritual stones a month, and the rent paid was not less than half a year each time. Lu Xuan has been poor and rich recently, and his net worth is nearly 300 spiritual stones. He is a little inflated in his heart. But now he realizes that this amount of spiritual stones is not enough when he really needs it, and he still needs to accumulate it for a while. Thinking of this, Lu Xuan turned to the scar-toothed man and said, I'll go back and think about it first. If I'm interested, I'll come to you again. After that, he turned and left. When Lu Xuan's figure went away, the scar-toothed man couldn't help but spit. What the hell? A small casual cultivator at the second level of key training wants to rent this kind of spiritual field. Wishful thinking. You're wasting my time. Lu Xuan frowned slightly. It has been a while since he broke through to the third level of key training. His 5 senses are much sharper than before. He vaguely heard the words of the scarred young cultivator. Then he sneered and didn't care about the Yaman's attitude. He just quietly put him on the blacklist and never went to him to look at the spiritual field again. Hey, I always felt too poor before. I couldn't bear to feed a broken spirit to the grass puppet. Now I have nearly 300 spirit stones. I can feed a grass puppet 1 throw. No, I can feed 2. But why do I feel that I'm really too poor? This thought came to his mind. I still have to work hard to earn spirit stones. Zhang Han went to the wilderness secret realm again after a few days of rest. Zhang Ziyuan has been working these days. The two continued to cooperate. Zhang Ziyuan found casual cultivators who met the conditions and encountered insect infestations, and Lu Zuan took action to solve the insect infestation. As he used it more and more times, he naturally had a deeper understanding of the Zhengjin sword art. In addition, he had a clean and neat way of removing insects at a low price, and he also gained a certain reputation among the independent cultivators in the northern district. Previously, Zhang Ziyuan had to take the initiative to find customers, but now they come to the door by themselves, and they have to wait in line when there are many people. On this day, Lu Zuan accepted 5 spirit stones and walked out of a dilapidated courtyard with a grateful independent cultivator seeing him off. Dao Iao Lu, what a coincidence, I actually met you here. A gentle voice sounded in his ears. Lu Zuan looked at the voice and saw a fat white cultivator standing at the corner, smiling at Lu Zuan and the others. What a coincidence, the northern district is so big, how could I just happen to meet you here? He was obviously waiting for me. Lu Zuan complained in his heart and replied with a smile. It's Brother Qin. I haven't seen you for a long time. You have become even more advanced. You are truly a role model for our generation of casual cultivators. I don't deserve the title. Brother Lu surprised me. I didn't expect that a casual cultivator of the second level of key training who needed my help to get rid of insect pests a few months ago has now grown to the point where he can easily deal with insect pests by himself. Qin sighed. He really didn't expect that the casual cultivator of key training who he didn't take seriously before would one day become his competitor with his exquisite sword skills. It was just luck. I'm still far behind Brother Qin. Lu Zuan's eyes revealed a trace of reminiscence. It all started with that pest. Since then, in order to prevent the spiritual plants in the spiritual field from being infested by pests again, I made up my mind and used all my wealth to buy a sword technique. After practicing hard for several months, and perhaps having a little talent in the sword path, I have achieved what I have today. However, due to my low cultivation level, I can only use the sword technique 2 or 3 times a day, which also means that I can only earn a few insignificant spirit stones now. Due to the conflict of interest, Lu Zuan had already anticipated the scene of meeting other cultivators who were solving pest problems, especially Qin, who was at the 4th level of key training in front of him, who was the most business in the North District. He spoke out the answers he had prepared long ago and stated that his cultivation level was low and he only wanted to earn some spirit stones for his own use and he could not steal much of Qin business. I see. Qin nodded slightly. However, fellow Daoist Lu is still young now, so you should focus on cultivation and stay out of pest problems. Qin looked at Lu Zuan with a smile, half advising and half threatening. Thank you for your reminder, fellow Daoist Qin. I know what to do. Lu Zuan replied calmly, pulling Zhang Ziyuan away. As they walked, he could always feel a gaze falling on his back. There are many independent cultivators in the North District. I said I only earned a few spirit stones, but you still threatened me. What do you mean? He thought indignantly in his heart. He had already shown weakness, but Qin was still pursuing him so relentlessly, which made him angry. Suddenly, he paused, and an idea came into his mind. The more he thought about it, the worse it felt. Lu Zuan simply stopped and pulled Zhang Ziyuan next to him. Ziyuan, Uncle Lu needs your help with something. Go to the home of your good friend who is also in trouble with insects, and ask if he has invited a fat white mid-level key training cultivator who is good at ice magic. If so, ask him specifically how he dealt with the black budworm larvae after solving the pest problem. You are young, others will not be on guard against you, and will tell you the details. I will be guarding outside, you don't have to worry about safety issues. Zhang Ziyuan saw Lu Zuan's serious expression. He was sensible, since he was a child, and knew the seriousness of the situation. He pursed his lips and nodded vigorously. The two came to the family of casual cultivators that Zhang Ziyuan mentioned. Zhang Ziyuan shouted outside the yard and entered the courtyard at the invitation of a boy of the same age. Lu Zuan held a few talismans in his hand and waited quietly for him to come out. It is related to the recommendation. Please be sure to read today's update. Please. Chapter 19, the 4th level of key training. seeking follow-up reading. Uncle Lou, I have found out. The pest in his house was solved by the fat white monk. I don't have a deep impression of the larvae corpses after cleaning them up. They should have been taken away by the monk. Not long after, Zhang Ziyuan ran out panting, and the words in his mouth made Lu Xuan's heart tighten. Investigate again. He exhaled a foul breath and said firmly. He found 2 more casual cultivators and got the same answer. After solving the pest, Kinming took the larvae corpses away. In an instant, Lu Xuan's thoughts surged wildly in his mind, and a thread emerged, becoming clearer and clearer. Why is it that Kinming, who is also a 4th level key training cultivator, charges 10% or even 20% less than Fairy Lingayan and Sword Cultivator Li Zhu? Why did he take away the corpse of the black budworm larvae after he dealt with them? Why am I, a 2nd level key training cultivator, not even qualified to earn that little bit of spiritual stones? Because it was Kinming who released the black budworm larvae. He released the adult black budworms into the spiritual fields of casual cultivators, quietly laid eggs, and used the vitality of the spiritual plants in the spiritual fields to breed and nourish the black budworm larvae. When the larvae grow up, he recovers them under the guise of cleaning up pests. This also explains why the price of hiring Kinming is much lower than that of other 4th level key training cultivators with the same cultivation level. He is best at ice magic and can separate the black budworm larvae without harming the spiritual plants. He can also freeze the larvae instead of freezing them to death, and then thaw them after taking out the larvae. In this way, I can earn spiritual stones and easily take back the larvae parasitic on the spiritual plants, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Lu Xuan suddenly realized why he was so aggressive. Not only did he earn his spiritual stones, but he also killed the black budworm larvae that he was parasitic on. More importantly, he was just a small casual cultivator at the 2nd level of key training. So, the black budworm larvae that were solved before, and the adult insects that were killed in the middle of the night were all secretly placed in the spiritual field by him. Lu Xuan gritted his teeth when he thought of this. In other words, not only did he use spiritual plants to help him raise the larvae, but he also spent spiritual stones to ask him to take the grown larvae back. If it weren't for the appearance of the white light ball, the timely purchase of the protective formation, and the acquisition of the Zhengjin sword art, his own spiritual field would only suffer from insect infestation again and again until he, a small casual cultivator, was eaten alive. Sure enough, the weak will only attack the weaker. However, if you think that you are just a weakling and can be manipulated at will, you are wrong. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, his eyes bright. After returning home, Lu Xuan immediately surrounded the courtyard wall and carefully examined every part of the protective formation. The straw puppet sensed the breath of its master, stretched out a grey straw rope, and followed him like a small snake. Lu Xuan confirmed that there was no problem with the formation, came to the side of the straw puppet, took out a broken soul, and stuffed it into the huge tumor formed by the grey grass on its head. There is a huge gap in strength on the surface, and there is a considerable conflict of interest. It seems that Kinming will not let me go. Coincidentally, I don't want to let him go either. It's just that in recent times, although my cultivation, magic, elixir, talismans, etc. have improved greatly, Kinming is after all the 4th level of key training. I don't know how likely it is to win now. The most urgent task is to work hard to improve my strength and put aside the matter of cleaning up pests for the time being, so as not to be caught by him. Lu Xuan thought about it and decided to stay at home for the time being. While improving his strength, he was prepared for Kinming to break into his home. In the next few days, he stayed at home to cultivate spiritual plants and told Zhang Ziyuan not to go out casually. The remaining 14 eclipse moon fruits had all matured after the last picking. 12 of them were of good quality and 2 were of top quality. Lu Xuan picked up the 14 slightly flickering white light balls. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and get a first grade magic weapon, the cracked silver blade, remnant, ********** 3. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and get a first grade talisman, ******** 6. Harvest 1 eclipse moon fruit and get a pay yuan pill, ******* 3. The rewards from the 12 good quality eclipse moon fruits were as Lu Xuan expected. 3 silver white fragments of the cracked silver blade filled the last gap in the sword blade. A thin sword blade appeared in front of Lu Xuan. The sword blade was light silver white and extremely concealed, whether in the day or at night. He controlled the silver white sword blade with his spiritual power to dance freely in the air. The sword blade was extremely fast and extremely sharp. Lu Xuan took out a piece of rotten spiritual wood and tried it. The sword blade was like nothing, cutting the solid spiritual wood at the root like tofu. With a thought, the silver white sword blade that was swimming rapidly around him suddenly split into dozens of silver white flakes of various shapes, like a group of silver butterflies, flying around Lu Xuan quickly. Then, dozens of silver white flakes gathered together and formed a complete short sword blade. Finally, all the fragments of the silver split blade have been collected successfully. Lu Xuan breathed a sigh of relief. The complete silver split blade was sharper and could split into dozens of fragments in an instant. In the previous incomplete time, although Lu Xuan could control all the fragments, he still felt a little stagnant. But now, even if there are more fragments, the control is smooth and natural, and it is extremely smooth. The greatest value of this first grade magic weapon, the silver blade, lies in its ability to split into fragments. If it attacks in the form of a sword blade, it can only be regarded as a good first grade magic weapon, but if it suddenly splits into many fragments during the battle and attacks the opponent, then its value will rise by 2 levels. Lu Xuan controlled the silver white sword blade, turned a few sword flowers, and couldn't let it go. This is also the best way for him to deal with Kinming at this stage. The 6 talismans are all first grade talismans, and no new types of talismans have appeared. Lu Xuan carefully put them away. The first grade talismans already have the ability to harm mid-level key training cultivators. If there are enough of them, all fear comes from insufficient firepower. Lu Xuan looked at the many talismans he had collected during this period, and his heart was slightly relieved. In addition, there are 3 first grade Puan pills, 2 top grade eclipse moon fruits. The light ball opened 2 first grade pill recipes for Puan pills. After Lu Xuan absorbed them, he felt that he had a very rich theory on refining Puan pills. It was as if he had already watched countless movies and had a solid theoretical foundation, even though he had not yet put it into actual combat. For the next 10 days, everything was calm and there were no disturbances. Kinming seemed to have forgotten Lu Xuan. However, Lu Xuan did not dare to be careless and took precautions every day. Every day, except for taking care of the spiritual plants in the yard, he stayed in the house and did not go out. The firefly grass in the spiritual field had been planted for quite some time. Under his meticulous cultivation, the firefly grass gradually entered the mature stage in the past 10 days. Lu Xuan harvested 6 firefly grasses, 4 of which were of good quality and 2 of which were of superior quality. As soon as the firefly grass seeds were planted, Lu Xuan gave them the best cultivation conditions, based on their immediate state. The effort would be rewarded, and the probability of superior quality also increased a lot. Among them, 3 of the 6 light balls that opened were awarded with several months of cultivation. Harvest 1 Lingyiang grass, gain 6 months of cultivation. **2. Harvest 1 Lingyiang grass, gain 9 months of cultivation. The thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind, and the spiritual power in his body surged, raging wildly in his meridians. As if breaking through a non-existent barrier, the spiritual power gradually calmed down, finally broke through to the 4th level of key training. Lu Xuan showed a relieved smile on his face. After breaking through to the 3rd level of key training for a while, Lu Xuan had been practicing hard, and with the 3 new light balls, he had gained nearly 2 years of cultivation, which enabled him to break through in one fell swoop and become a mid-level key training cultivator. Chapter 20. Is this the 2nd level of key training? From the other 3 white light balls, 2 Jengjin sword tactics and a first grade talisman, the earth wall talisman, appeared. After use, it can stimulate a thick earth wall about 10 feet high, which has a good protective effect. Lu Xuan digested the Jengjin sword tactics in his mind and carefully experienced and comprehended the exquisiteness of the sword tactics. While the spiritual power was running, a golden stream of light appeared almost instantly and passed through a boulder with a whoosh. He felt that the sword tactics he mastered had reached a small success level. When urging it, it consumed less spiritual power, was faster, and the power was much higher. The 6 mature firefly grasses and the 6 white light balls brought by them further improved Lu Xuan's combat power. He even wished that Kinming would come later, preferably until all the firefly grasses matured, and he could even accept the ripening of red cloud pine or sword grass. However, he also knew that this was wishful thinking. After the opponent found out his bottom line and the law of action, he would naturally take action quickly. That night, everything was silent. A figure quietly emerged outside Lu Xuan's yard without causing a sound. Damn kid, quite cunning, hiding in the house all the time. However, you think hiding at home will be safe? It's too naive. Kinming stood quietly outside the yard, looking at the black thorns on the bluestone wall, a trace of mockery on his face. Relying on his cultivation level that was 2 small realms higher than Lu Xuan, he was fearless, and with a cat and mouse mentality, he even met Lu Xuan. Unexpectedly, the little casual cultivator of the 2nd level of key training was quite cautious. He had been hiding in the house for a while, and no longer went out to help people clean up pests. He waited around for a few days, and the other party didn't go out, so he simply came over. Basic protective formation. If it is a 1st grade formation, it will play a significant role. This kind of protective ability, just break it directly. He pointed one hand at the thin layer of spiritual energy shield outside the yard, and several sharp ice spikes emerged, spinning, with a low whistle, directly breaking the protective formation. When he came to the window, his spiritual sense sensed that there was no movement in the house. The broken protective formation did not seem to arouse any vigilance of the small casual cultivator. Your spiritual sense is too poor. You are still sleeping so soundly. Well, let you die in your sleep and suffer less pain. Kinming muttered in his heart, and then, a half-foot-long ice spear appeared above his head. The tip of the spear trembled slightly, and the white jade-like spear body exuded a biting coldness. The ice spear made a slight sound, and pierced the monk on the bed like a sharp arrow. The ice spear went straight through the entire bed, but Kinming felt something was wrong. He walked towards the wooden bed and a layer of frost armor appeared around him. He wanted to check it out. As soon as he entered the room, a golden stream of light instantly pierced Kinming's head at an extremely fast speed. The frost armor was easily pierced by the golden stream of light, and was about to pierce directly into his head. Feeling the fatal threat brought by the golden light, a jade plate on Kinming's waist shattered silently in an instant, and a layer of hazy spiritual light was generated on the surface of his body, expanding rapidly, blocking the remaining golden light outside. How dare you? Kinming looked at the rapidly melting Jengjin sword art, and a trace of fear flashed across his face. He was cautious enough, and added a frost armor technique to himself when he came in, but he didn't expect that a spiritual plant master at the 2nd level of key training would release such a lethal sword art. The frost armor technique that had made countless contributions in the past was so vulnerable. If it weren't for the jade plate magic weapon that sensed the danger and protected him in time, he might have fallen under this sword art. After the fear, there was a face full of regret. This jade plate magic weapon that blocked the fatal blow for him was extremely difficult to obtain. It cost him nearly 200 spirit stones. He always carried it close to him to prevent accidents. But he didn't expect that such a precious jade plate magic weapon would be consumed by this small casual cultivator at the 2nd level of key training. Very good. Your attainments in sword tactics far exceed my imagination, but that's all. I will make you regret wasting my top level protective magic weapon. He looked at Lu Xuan, whose figure emerged from the darkness in the corner, and said with a sinister look, I'm just an ordinary spiritual plant master. Why do you, a noble cultivator of the middle level of key training, have to kill me like this? Lu Xuan said indifferently. The mistake is that you killed so many of my larvae and earned the spiritual stones that should have belonged to me. The biggest mistake is that you are just a casual cultivator of the 2nd level of key training. Do you understand? Lu Xuan didn't say much and hooked his finger at Kinming. Humph. Being provoked by a spiritual plant master of the 2nd level of key training, Kinming's heart was filled with evil fire, and his spiritual power was activated. Dozens of ice cones emitting bone-chilling coldness quickly emerged in front of him, covering all possible directions for Lu Xuan to escape. Lu Xuan had no expression on his face. He threw his hands and used more than 10 first grade talismans at the same time. In an instant, dense sword blades attacked Kinming like a rain of arrows, mixed with red fireballs, blue-gray wood thorns, etc. They are all white spiritual stones. Or thought flashed through Lu Xuan's mind quickly. This attack almost emptied all the talismans he had collected during this period. He was fighting a spiritual stone war. At the same time, a pale silver-white sword blade followed behind the many sword ki, not conspicuous at all. Seeing so many sword ki attacking him, Kinming cursed in his heart, pressed with one hand, and a thick ice wall suddenly rose in front of him. He really has a deep attainment in ice magic. The frost armor technique can be thin enough to freeze the black budworm larvae as thin as hair, and it can also quickly form such an ice wall with strong protective ability. Hundreds and thousands of sword ki whistled in, and with the sound of ding dong dong, countless tiny cracks appeared on the ice wall. Under the impact of the sword ki behind, the cracks spread rapidly, and ice cubes of all sizes fell. With a bang, the red fireball hit the crack, and the ice and fire blended, instantly producing a violent explosion. A huge hole appeared on the ice wall. A silver-white sword light quietly passed through, and stabbed Kinming's head. Come on. A flying sword flew out from Kinming's waist, and met the silver-white sword blade. Just as the two were about to touch, the silver-white sword blade suddenly split into dozens of thin fragments. The fragments carried a sharp sword intent, and in Kinming's eyes, they attacked various parts of his body. The largest thin piece bypassed Kinming's head and gently scratched it, and a thin line appeared on the back of his neck, and then bright red blood sprayed out. The moment the head fell off, Kinming's remaining consciousness saw that one or more thin fragments were pierced in various places such as his limbs, heart, and lower genitals. Is this the second level of ki training? Endless regret surged in his heart, and then his consciousness fell into endless darkness. Chapter 21 Nothing to do today. Spiritual field planting. Lu Xuan watched from afar as Kinming's body was torn apart, and his body was full of broken silver blade fragments. Several grey straw ropes extended from the wooden bed, and tied up Kinming's body. Lu Xuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He lifted the quilt, and saw the straw puppet with a big hole in its chest trying hard to trap the enemy who invaded the yard. Fortunately, this straw puppet has a certain recovery ability. As long as there are enough spiritual stones, it can recover as usual. Considering that you blocked a blow for me, it will definitely recover completely. Lu Xuan looked at the straw puppet that was a few beats slower, and tried its best, and comforted it. His spiritual power was running, and a fist-sized fireball fell on Kinming's body. The flames quickly spread to the entire body, and soon it turned into a pile of black ash. Then, he took out a talisman with strange runes on the edge and the evil spirit suppressed in the middle from his arms. The talisman was thrown out, and a white light swept across the whole room. This was the evil removing talisman he had obtained before, which could detect and purify low-level evil spirits. Lu Xuan was worried that Kinming died at the hands of a mere ki training level 2 spiritual plant master like him. His resentment was too strong, and might give rise to evil spirits. After destroying the corpse with the fireball technique, he was still not at ease, so he spent a lot of money to use another evil spirit removal talisman to prevent the appearance of evil spirits. Anyway, so many sword ki talismans had been used up, so this one didn't matter. The white light disappeared, and the room returned to darkness. Only a little silver white moonlight shone in from the hole, pierced by the ice spear. Lu Xuan was completely relieved, lit a candle on the wooden table, and swept the black ash together. Under the control of spiritual power, dozens of broken silver blade fragments merged together again, and turned into a silver white sword blade. With a sharp weapon in hand, Lu Xuan was a little bolder. He took the black ash to the spiritual field, and sprinkled it on the spiritual soil. This is the fertilizer formed by a mid-level ki training cultivator. You must work hard to grow, and don't let him down for nourishing you. He looked at the many spiritual plants in the spiritual field and sighed softly. In the yard, the moon was as cool as water and there was silence. The fierce fight that just happened did not seem to attract any attention from the surrounding cultivators. The casual cultivators living here have long developed good habits, not caring about other people's business, and they do not have the capital to meddle in other people's business. Little brother Lu, little brother Lu. Outside the courtyard wall, a slightly nervous female voice came from afar, calling Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan recognized that it was Zhang Ziyuan's mother, Xuan, who lived nearby. "I'm fine, thank you sister-in-law for your concern." Hearing this familiar voice, Lu Xuan felt a little warm in his heart. Xuan was just a woman of the second level of key training. It was precious that she could take the risk to come out, even if it was just to ask about her condition from a distance. "That's good. I was afraid that you might get hurt, and because I'm not strong enough, I can only ask from a distance." Hearing Lu Xuan's words, Xuan's voice moved closer. "There was a blind thief who wanted to come in and steal my spiritual plants. I found him and killed him." Lu Xuan made up a reason to deal with Xuan. "Sister-in-law, go back and have a rest. I'm worried about Xuan being alone at home. I will keep your concern in mind." "Okay, then you should be more careful." Seeing that Lu Xuan was fine, Xuan returned to her home. It's a pity that this protective formation was broken by Kinming's brute force after not being used for long. Lu Xuan returned to the house with regret. After everything was settled, he finally relaxed completely and sat down on the wooden chair weakly. Although Kinming was dealt with without any damage this time, it was actually far from being as easy as it seemed. Kinming was worthy of his identity as a mid-level cultivator of key training. He had a lot of experience. Whether it was the jade token that blocked his fatal blow, the flying sword magic weapon, or the perfect ice magic, it showed how difficult he was. Fortunately, I have accumulated enough knowledge during this period. His cultivation level was also at the 4th level of key training, not inferior to Kinming. In addition, he had reached the minor success stage of the Zhengjin sword art, and many first grade talismans were used without the need for spirit stones. The complete first grade magic weapon, the silver blade, played a key role. With sufficient preparation and unexpectedness, he was able to kill him without any danger. Whether it was magic weapons, spells, or talismans, they were all stronger than Kinming. What could he use to fight against himself? "I don't know how much this storage bag can make up for my losses." Lu Xuan sighed as he looked at the grey storage bag taken from Kinming's waist. Most of the talismans were used up, and he was still heartbroken. He only hoped that the storage bag left by Kinming could make up for it. "Thank you for the storage bag, my friend." He had wanted to buy a storage bag for a long time, but he didn't expect that Kinming was so considerate and brought him a ready-made one. The grey storage bag was of a lower grade and had no restrictions drawn on it. Lu Xuan tested his spiritual power and easily probed into it. The space inside was not small, with a length, width and height of more than half a meter. Kinming left some things piled up in a corner. Lu Xuan happily used his spiritual power to control the things in the storage bag to fly out. He took a rough look at the spiritual stones and found that there were about 200 of them. There were also 7 or 8 bottles and jars, both jade bottles and stone bottles. Lu Xuan was afraid that there were some poisonous things in them, so he did not open them directly and put them aside first. In addition, there was a book that recorded the cultivation methods of several low-grade ice-based spells, which were not very useful to Lu Xuan. 3 talismans, 2 evil-repelling talismans, and 1 swift talisman. Finally, there was a flying sword magic weapon left outside, which was grayish-white and exuded a chill. Lu Xuan made a simple comparison and found that it was much worse than his own silver breaking blade. What a kind man. "I don't have a storage bag, so he sent me one. I need spirit stones to rent a large yard, and he sent me these 200 spirit stones. Even after death, he still has to use his remaining energy to nourish the spirit plants in the spirit field. He really." Lu Xuan thought of Kinming's great contribution, and he was heartbroken. He bowed his head and mourned for a moment. "It's really a gold belt for killing and arson." Lu Xuan looked at the pile of things on the wooden table and couldn't help saying. He had worked hard to plant for so long, but it would be better to kill the harvest brought by Kinming. However, this thought disappeared in an instant. He knew in his heart that such a huge harvest is often accompanied by greater risks. It is impossible to get benefits every time without taking risks. Kinming seemed to have a very low risk this time, but he still lost it in his hands. Therefore, it is better to farm safely, with a huge profit and close to zero risk. After counting, it was dawn. Lu Xuan walked out of the house and came to the spirit field. Threads of spiritual rain seeped into the remaining dozen or so spiritual fireflies. The green and oily spiritual fireflies stretched their leaves lazily. Lu Xuan vaguely felt that the leaves were a little fatter than yesterday. Then, a fireball flew out, and before landing on the fine red needles of the red cloud pine, it turned into wisps of flames and merged into the pine needles, causing the red cloud pine to explode instantly. The golden sword energy fell on the straight sword grass, leaving a few golden fine lines. Under the dark marrow Ganoderma, the breath from the rotten spiritual wood became a little stronger, causing the Ganoderma in the shadow to breed more dark red hyphae. Nothing to do today, planting in the spiritual field. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 20 To Land Lease. Maturing. He focused his mind on the firefly grass, and the status of the 14 firefly grasses showed that they were all maturing. Faster. Higher. Stronger. The black sword grass stood upright, conveying to Lu Xuan a spirit of optimism. When the flowers bloom, come and see me. Lu Xuan saw several bright red flower clusters emerging from the fine red needles of the red cloud pine. After cultivating for so long, the red cloud pine finally bloomed. The air is filled with a more rotten smell than usual, with a hint of burnt smell, which is fascinating. On the rotten wood, the dark marrow Ganoderma with countless dark red mycelium obviously likes the special fertilizer that Lu Xuan added to the spiritual field last night. He walked around the spiritual field and returned to the house after confirming that each spiritual plant was growing well. Among the things left by Kinming, the storage bag was directly used by Lu Xuan, not to mention the more than 200 spirit stones. As for the remaining flying swords and magic tools, and the unknown elixirs in the bottles and jars, he did not plan to rush to take action for the time being. After all, he didn't know if there were any secret marks on the flying sword, so he decided to wait until the storm was over before exchanging for spirit stones or spirit seeds. After a few days, Lu Xuan stayed in the yard, tending to the spirit plants every day. He seemed to be relaxed and comfortable, but in fact, he was nervous inside, worried about the follow-up reactions that might be caused by killing Kinming. After finding no cultivators invading or spying on his yard, he relaxed a little and walked out of the house. The area of the spiritual field in the yard was too small, and with what manager he of Baikao Tang said about establishing a simple cooperation model with Lu Xuan had the idea of renting out a larger spiritual field. He entered a dental shop that specialized in serving cultivators. There were a few people in the hall of the dental shop, entertaining cultivator customers, or sorting out something. Welcome fellow Taoist. A dental shop owner who was free saw a customer coming to the door and greeted him immediately with an extremely enthusiastic smile on his face. So it's fellow Daoist Lu. Are you planning to see the spiritual fields again? This broker happened to be the scarred young monk who had been gossiping behind his back last time. He had a good memory and immediately recognized Lu Xuan's figure. The smile on his face froze, and he deliberately emphasized the word again. Lu Xuan nodded, his expression indifferent. Seeing Lu Xuan's attitude, the scarred monk's eyes flashed with a hint of extremely obscure sarcasm, and shouted to a slightly fat young monk next to him. Hey, this fellow Daoist wants to see the spiritual fields. You come and entertain him. He knew that Lu Xuan was just a casual cultivator at the second level of key training, and it was impossible for him to have the strength to rent those large courtyards. He didn't want to waste time. So he directly called a small casual cultivator who had just joined the brokerage. The slightly fat young man looked up and said to Lu Xuan with a smile, if you have any needs, you can ask me directly. I have a large number of spiritual fields here, which can meet your needs at all levels. I have a spiritual field that I have taken a fancy to before. You can take me there to have a look. Lu Xuan explained to the slightly fat monk the spiritual fields he had seen and asked him to take them there directly. The slightly fat young monk nodded, and the two left the shop. Look at those large spiritual fields again. What's the point of looking at more? It's because you can't afford to rent them. The scarred young monk looked at the backs of the two people going away, sneered, turned around, and quickly changed to an extremely enthusiastic smile. My fellow Taoist, let me introduce you to that popular and high quality spiritual field. Lu Xuan's first choice was the yard with a spiritual spring. Although it had the highest rent, requiring 60 spiritual stones a month, the attraction of the spiritual spring was too strong. More importantly, with Kinming's more than 200 spiritual stones, Lu Xuan now felt that the price was not bad. The slightly plump young monk brought him to the huge courtyard, took out a special array plate, and opened the protective array arranged outside. Please look, fellow Daoist Lu, this courtyard is located near the center of the town. There are some famous mid-level key training monks living nearby, so it is safe. The spiritual field in the courtyard is more than 1 acre, with rich spiritual energy, which can accelerate the growth of spiritual plants. It is most suitable for spiritual plant masters like fellow Daoist Lu. Of course, the most important thing is the spiritual spring in the spiritual field, which can continuously ooze out spiritual spring water with weak spiritual energy. Whether it is used to brew spiritual wine or brew spiritual tea, it is very suitable. Adding a small amount of spiritual spring water when refining pills and instruments can also slightly improve the quality of pills and instruments. The slightly plump young monk pointed to a spiritual spring and said to Lu Xuan, the spiritual spring is about 10 feet long and half a foot wide, with a shallow layer of accumulated spiritual spring inside. Can this spiritual spring be guaranteed to always be there? Won't it be used up and no longer appear? He raised a question to the slightly plump monk. You can rest assured, fellow Daoist. It is said that the spiritual spring is closely connected to a branch of the spiritual vein in the market. There will always be spiritual springs seeping out, but the amount is not large. This can be written into the contract. If not, we will give you enough compensation. The slightly fat young cultivator said with a smile. Can the price be lower? 60 spiritual stones a month is a bit too expensive. Lu Xuan skillfully used his old skills. The rent is not something I can decide. However, if you want to rent it, you can use the first grade protective formation in the courtyard for free for a period of time. The slightly fat young cultivator sighed in his heart, and the slight hope that Lu Xuan might rent it was instantly gone. 60 spiritual stones. Lu Xuan pondered for a moment. Then let it be. If you think 60 spiritual stones a month is too expensive, you can also go and take a look at a nearby courtyard. The slightly fat young cultivator smiled and answered in a formula. Ah. He suddenly realized something, and looked up at Lu Xuan, his eyes half expectant and half suspicious. Lu Xuan nodded with a half smile. Thank you, fellow Daoist. Thank you, fellow Daoist. I will help you take care of everything right away. Yahang. The scarred monk was lying on a wooden chair, rocking back and forth gently, and it can be seen that he was in a very good mood. Just now, he successfully closed a deal and rented out a small courtyard for 7 spirit stones a month, earning a considerable commission. The slightly fat young man rushed in. You're back so soon. Didn't that casual cultivator ask you to take him to see a few more spiritual fields? He looked at the slightly fat young monk who rushed to the counter, with a hint of mockery in his tone. No, I only saw one. The slightly fat young monk didn't even raise his head and replied casually. Then he still has a conscience, and didn't waste too much of your time. Yes, fellow Daoist Lu is really too good. He immediately booked a spiritual field after seeing it, and paid the deposit. The scarred monk thought he had heard something wrong, and the gently rocking wooden chair stopped directly. The slightly plump young monk raised his head and smiled innocently. The one that costs 60 spirit stones a month. With a clang, the wooden chair lost control and fell to the ground. Chapter 23 Bloodjade Ginseng. After confirming that the courtyard with the spiritual spring was rented, the two sides quickly completed the handover. The slightly plump young monk did as he said, and took care of all the trivial matters for Lu Xuan, saving him a lot of time and energy. Lu Xuan paid the rent for half a year, and most of the spiritual stones in his hand were consumed at once, leaving only more than 160. Fortunately, the firefly grass has gradually entered the mature stage, and there are 14 eclipse moon fruits that have not been sold before, so he is not very worried about the shortage of spiritual stones. The new courtyard is temporarily protected by the first grade formation, provided by the dental shop. The key formation plate is handed over to Lu Xuan. As long as Lu Xuan adjusts the formation pattern on it, it will be difficult for other monks to enter the courtyard. The formation can only be broken by brute force, or by monks, who are good at formations. Therefore, Lu Xuan first took advantage of this free and more effective protective formation, and when he has more money, he will change to another formation that belongs to him. In the small courtyard where he lived before, Lu Xuan looked at the spiritual plants in the courtyard and felt a little reluctant for a while. This small courtyard accompanied him through many stages of his life, including cultivation, living, and cultivating spiritual plants. Every place left countless impressive scenes. The spiritual plants in the spiritual field, from the initial spiritual firefly grass to the planting of 2 eclipse moon trees. After the white light ball appeared, it was added with a first-grade red cloud pine, a second-grade sword grass, and a second-grade dark marrow ganoderma. If the old does not go, the new will not come. He calmed down and thought optimistically. Moving is relatively simple. He doesn't have many clothes, not to mention elixirs, talismans, and magic tools. A storage bag is more than enough. There are mainly 2 problems that are difficult to solve. One is the spiritual plants planted in the spiritual field. Spiritual plants are living things, and storage bags can only hold dead things. If they are forced in, I'm afraid that the life will soon pass away. Lu Xuan can only choose to dig out the spiritual plants and the spiritual soil and move them to the new courtyard as quickly as possible. In this way, although it will also have some impact on the spiritual plants, with his grasp of the real-time status of the spiritual plants, he will quickly adjust and restore them. Among the spiritual plants in the spiritual field, 4 more spiritual fireflies matured, bringing Lu Xuan a total of 1 year's cultivation, 1 experience pack for the earth attraction technique and the Zhengjin sword art. The remaining 10 spiritual plants are estimated to mature in the next few days. Lu Xuan plans to pick them directly after they mature and not bring them to the new spiritual field. As for the red cloud pine, swordgrass, and dark marrow ganoderma, they are small in size and precious in value. Lu Xuan plans to dig out 3 of them and plant them in the new spiritual field. The 2 eclipse moon trees are too big, and it will take a long time before they mature again. Moreover, because they are not of good quality and occupy a large area, Lu Xuan plans to give them to Zhang Xuan, and the new spiritual field will be planted with higher grade spiritual plants. Another problem is how to deal with the small courtyard. After all, he just paid a rent of 30 spiritual stones, and it would be a waste if he gave it up. But he didn't have the energy to go back and forth between the 2 courtyards, so he could only focus on the new courtyard. If he gave the courtyard to Zhang Hang's wife to take care of, he was afraid that it would bring them unwarranted disasters. It is difficult to let it go easily when a mid-level key training cultivator dies in the yard. I can only rent it out to other casual cultivators at a lower price. He searched for a few days in the casual cultivator market and found a cultivator at the 2nd level of key training. He rented it out to him for the 2nd time at the price of 4 spirit stones and 30 broken spirits per month. It's a waste of spirit stones. It hurts my heart. After receiving the rent paid by the cultivator, Lu Xuan felt as if a piece of his flesh had been cut off. After properly handling the small courtyard, he came to Zhang's house before leaving and said goodbye to Xuan and Zhang Xuan. What? Uncle Lu, you are moving away. When Lu Xuan said that he was about to move out of here, Zhang Xuan was shocked and then held his hand tightly. Xuan, who was standing beside him, also showed a trace of surprise and then, not knowing what she thought of, nodded suddenly. Yes, but the place where I live is not far from your home. When you have free time, you can often come to visit me. Lu Xuan comforted. It's just that the pest control work we worked on together before has to be put aside for now. After the incident with Kinming, Lu Xuan's idea of earning spirit stones by solving pest control faded a lot. He always felt that there was a lot of water in this matter and didn't want to get involved again. Sister-in-law, I have rented out the yard and the spirit field. There are 2 eclipse moon trees in it. I don't plan to take them over. You can transplant them. Seeing Lu Xuan's firm tone, Xuan, who was originally going to refuse, nodded. Brother Lu, you moved too hastily. I can't help it. After all, sister-in-law also knows that the outer area of the North District is full of people and it's not very safe. After the incident that happened some time ago, I had the idea of moving away. Indeed, if our family has the conditions, we will move to a more central area. It's also a good thing for you to move away, Xuan echoed, agreeing with Lu Xuan's opinion. Lu Xuan didn't stay for long. He brought 14 eclipse moon fruits and 10 spirit firefly grasses to Baikao Tang. Lu kid, you're finally here. Put down the spiritual plant in your hand and go with me to see someone. As soon as they arrived at Baikao Tang, the thin old man grabbed Lu Xuan's hand and went inside. The room inside was extremely luxuriously decorated. The floor was covered with soft animal skins. The tables and chairs were made of spiritual wood. In the middle was a huge medicine furnace with 2 ears and 3 legs. Smoke floated out of the medicine furnace, and a fresh medicinal fragrance came from it. A beautiful girl sat on a wooden chair, stroking a small mink with snow white fur on her leg. Miss, this is the Lu Xuan I mentioned. He has a very good talent in the field of spiritual plants, and can grow spiritual plants of good or even superior quality in large quantities. Manager he bent down and said, and it can be seen that he respects the girl very much. Lu Xuan also bowed slightly. The beautiful girl moved her eyes away from the white mink and glanced at Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan's breath-retaining method was quietly running, maintaining his cultivation at the level of the second level of key training. Grandpa he, it's rare for you to introduce a spiritual plant master to cooperate with the hall. I don't need to say much about his level. The beautiful girl raised her chin slightly. It's just that I see that he is younger than me and has a low level of cultivation. He needs to prove himself with his performance. The spiritual seeds in Baikao Hall are not easy to come by. I don't feel comfortable handing over those second grade spiritual seeds to him to plant. So, in the early stage, Baikao Hall will provide him with a certain number of Lingian grass spiritual seeds, and he can also choose a first grade spiritual seed. If his performance is good in the future, new varieties will be added. Of course, this is enough. The thin old man nodded respectfully and pondered for a moment. There are currently several first grade spiritual plants in the hall that are in short supply. I'm quite familiar with this kid, so I will make the decision for him and help him choose one of the first grade blood jade ginseng. What do you think, young lady? Okay. The beautiful girl nodded in agreement. Seeing this, the thin old man showed a hint of joy on his face and left the room with Lu Xuan, who was in a daze. Chapter 24, Not Guarding the Path. The two entered the pharmacy. Lu Xuan finally spoke up and asked the question in his mind. Manager he, you made me confused. What's going on? It's mainly because I happened to meet that young lady here, so I was a little anxious. The thin old man pointed to the inner room and pulled Lu Xuan to a corner. Do you know the owner behind Baikao Tang? One of the most famous alchemy masters in Linyang Market. The one just now is his granddaughter, with outstanding talent. She is about the same age as you, and has already reached the middle level of key training. She is very favored by the master, and has the right to handle most of the affairs in Baikao Tang. I see. He nodded after hearing Manager He's explanation. But what about the blood jade ginseng? You are just a casual spiritual plant master after all. The lady does not trust you enough, so she can only give you those spiritual seeds of average quality to help plant. However, I believe that your strength will soon be no weaker than those powerful spiritual plant masters in Baikao Tang. As for the blood jade ginseng I just mentioned, I'm afraid that you are not clear about those spiritual plants and make the wrong choice, so I made the decision on my own. Please don't mind. Lu Xuan shook his head hurriedly. I can't thank you enough. Why would I mind? He had dealt with Manager He many times and could clearly feel his kindness towards him. Among those first grade spiritual seeds, the blood jade ginseng has the lowest requirements for spiritual energy in the spiritual field, and the cultivation conditions are simple. When the hall recycles it, the price is still considerable, which is the most cost-effective among those spiritual plants. The only disadvantage is that the cultivation method is relatively trivial, but I see that you are focused on planting spiritual plants and don't pay much attention to cultivation. It is the most suitable for you. Lu Xuan made rapid progress in cultivating spiritual plants, and he also revealed to the old man that he focused his energy on cultivating spiritual plants. So Manager He weighed the pros and cons and helped him choose a first grade blood jade ginseng. Lu Xuan did not comment on the thin old man's view of him as an ordinary second level spiritual plant master who practiced Qi. Thank you very much, old he. I, Lu, have no way to repay you. He smiled and showed a mouthful of white teeth. How about these spiritual plants be cheaper? Manager, he narrowed his eyes and forced a mischievous smile on his wrinkled face. No, the relationship between us cannot be measured by mere spiritual stones. Lu Xuan refused righteously. I knew that you value spiritual stones more than your life. Take them out and see them. Lu Xuan took out the ripe eclipse moon fruit and firefly grass from the cloth bag. He hid the storage bag and did not bring it out. A total of 14 eclipse moon fruits, 12 of which are of good quality and 2 of superior quality. There are not many firefly grasses, only 10, but 3 of them are of top quality, and the rest are of good quality. Manager, please calculate the price. I was right about you. You have a great talent for cultivating spiritual plants. The thin old man was no longer surprised by the mature spiritual plants that Lu Xuan took out, which were at least of good quality. He sighed and said, while checking the quality of the spiritual plants, a good quality eclipse moon fruit costs 1 spirit stone and 10 broken spirits, and a top quality one costs an additional 20 broken spirits, for a total of 15 spirit stones and 80 broken spirits. A good quality firefly grass costs 3 spirit stones and 50 broken spirits each, and a top quality one costs an additional 20 broken spirits, for a total of 35 spirit stones and 60 broken spirits. 2 kinds of spiritual plants. In the end the total is 51 spirit stones and 40 broken spirits. Manager, he took out a small pile of spirit stones from the storage bag and handed it to Lu Xuan. Lu Xuan took it with satisfaction. Although the spirit stones earned from growing spirit plants were far less than those from helping the casual cultivators to clean up pests and all the wealth Kinming brought, he would rather choose the former. If for nothing else, just for peace of mind. After dealing with this batch of mature spirit plants, there were only the last 10 spirit firefly grasses left in the small courtyard. Judging from the current status, Lu Xuan estimated that they would all mature in the next few days, just before the handover with the new casual cultivator tenant. Old he, didn't you say before that you would sell the spirit seeds to me at a low price after reaching a cooperation? He couldn't suppress his desire for new spirit seeds and asked the thin old man, how much area can be freed up in your small courtyard after planting the spirit firefly grass and the eclipse moon tree? I moved to a new courtyard not long ago. There is a spirit field in it that is much larger than the previous one. A lot of spirit plants can be planted. I can't tell. You kid has saved up a lot of spirit stones. No wonder every time you come to Baekotang, you have to fight for a broken spirit. Manager, he only thought that Lu Xuan had saved enough spirit stones by saving, and he didn't expect that he would rent a courtyard with a spiritual spring. He teased and took Lu Xuan into a side room. After greeting a middle-aged cultivator inside, he said to Lu Xuan, Baekotang has its own channels for spiritual seeds, which are 10% or 20% cheaper than buying them outside. The firefly grass spiritual seeds cost 30 broken spirits each, and the blood jade ginseng is a first-grade spiritual plant, so the price is much higher, 4 spirit stones each. Lu Xuan compared the price with the price when he bought the spirit seeds before. The firefly grass spirit seeds he bought a few months ago were 40 broken spirits each, while the ones in Baekotang were 30, which was more than 20% cheaper. As for the blood jade ginseng spirit seeds, he had never bought them before, so he could only compare them with the red cloud pine he bought at that time. The red cloud pine was 5 spirit stones, while the blood jade ginseng spirit seeds were 4 spirit stones, which was also much cheaper. He instantly felt that he had made a fortune. Then I want 100 firefly grass spirit seeds and 20 blood jade ginseng spirit seeds. Among the 2 mature spiritual plants, only the firefly grass can bring him cultivation rewards, so he plans to plant more. On the surface, he created an image of a spiritual plant master who gave up cultivation and devoted himself to farming, but in fact he still had a strong desire for power. After all, in such a cultivation world where strength is respected, only if one's own strength is strong enough can one have more security and freedom. The spiritual stones that had not yet been warmed up were spent twice as much. Lu Xuan took the spiritual seeds he had obtained and sighed in his heart. Returning to the new courtyard, Lu Xuan controlled the array plate to open the array and came to the spiritual field in the backyard. From the explanation of Manager he learned that the blood jade ginseng spiritual seeds were usually preserved by special means, and they must be planted as soon as possible after being taken out, otherwise the vitality would be lost quickly. Without further ado, he took out a long and flat jade box and removed a small talisman attached to it. Opening the jade box, 20 bright red seeds like jade came into view, and a light red mist rose from the surface of each spiritual seed, with a slightly cool feeling. This is also a means to slow down the loss of vitality of the blood jade ginseng spiritual seeds. Lu Xuan hurriedly took the spirit seed out of the jade box and circulated his spirit power. Under the traction of the earth drawing technique, tiny cracks appeared in the spirit field in front of him. Blood jade ginseng, a first-grade spiritual plant, can be used as the main material for most low-grade ki and blood elixirs when mature. After planting, both the spirit seed and the spirit ginseng are restless and move slowly and freely in the spirit soil. If they sense the same species, they will attract each other. After being attached to each other for a long time, they will plunder each other's vitality until one of them withers. Lu Xuan gathered his mind and learned the detailed information of the blood jade ginseng. This blood jade ginseng is a bit unruly. He couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 25 Red-bearded Carp. When he left Baikao Tang, Manager he had told him to keep the blood jade ginseng as far apart as possible when cultivating it, and not to let them get tangled together, so as not to affect each other's growth. After planting the blood jade ginseng spirit seeds, he learned a specific reason. Spirit seeds or spirit ginseng can move slowly in the spirit field. If they are close to each other, they will be attracted to each other and stay together for a long time, plundering each other's vitality until the winner is determined and the loser withers. Of course, spirit plant masters generally do not allow such extreme situations to occur. After noticing that the roots of the spirit ginseng are entangled, they use methods to separate them. They are attracted to each other, then you love me, entangled together, and then absorb each other's vitality until I separate them. Why do they feel like a pair of lovers, and I'm the parent who ruthlessly separates them? Lu Xuan couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, he doesn't have much else, but he has a lot of time to ensure that the two blood jade ginsengs will not touch each other. There shouldn't be a difference between male and female blood jade ginseng, right? He shook his head, throwing away the image of blood jade ginseng entangled in his mind. After planting 20 blood jade ginseng spiritual seeds, Lu Xuan used the spiritual rain technique to nourish them. The spiritual rain seeped into the soil and was greedily absorbed by the jade-like blood red spiritual seeds. Next, he planted 100 spiritual firefly grass seeds that looked like dried tea leaves, and also used the spiritual rain technique to provide them with nutrients. The new spiritual field is about 10 times larger than the previous one. After planting 100 spiritual firefly grass seeds and 20 blood jade ginseng seeds, there is still a small half area left. Lu Xuan plans to use it to plant red cloud pine, dark marrow ganoderma and sword grass. If he finds other good spiritual seeds, he will try to buy them and plant them. How can I make the best use of this spiritual spring? He looked at the spiritual spring with shallow spring water in the spiritual field and fell into deep thought. Spiritual spring water is usually used to assist in alchemy, wine making, and tea making. Some cultivators also take it directly to slightly increase the spiritual power in their bodies. However, this was a bit useless to Lu Xuan. With the cultivation bonus brought by the firefly grass, he looked down on that little bit of spiritual power. Although aquatic spiritual plants are relatively rare, they are not unavailable. You can try to find them in the market or shops. This spiritual spring is not small in area. I guess we can't find so many aquatic spiritual plants. It would be a pity to waste them like this. Maybe we can raise 1 or 2 spiritual fish? An idea suddenly popped up in Lu Xuan's mind, and it became stronger and stronger. Growing spiritual medicine in the spiritual field will bring light ball rewards. If we cultivate spiritual beasts, will there be rewards? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but get excited. If there are no, it's not a loss. The spiritual fish raised by the spiritual spring water can also be sold at a good price. If there are, then we can make a lot of money. I must give it a try. The idea in his heart became more and more firm. He opened the formation and left the courtyard. First, he went back to the old courtyard. There were still 10 spiritual fireflies that were about to mature in the spiritual field in the courtyard. He harvested a batch and waited for 2 days. He also helped Xuan transplant 2 eclipse moon trees to her home. After he was done, all the firefly grasses were mature. Among the 10 firefly grasses, 6 were of good quality and 4 were of superior quality. It was probably because the spiritual power of the spiritual field was insufficient that he had not yet planted a spiritual plant of higher quality. Among the 10 white light balls that appeared, 4 brought him several months of cultivation, a total of more than 2 years, making the spiritual energy in his body more stable. There were also 3 light balls that brought 3 first grade talismans, and the other 3 were magic experience packages, 2 earth drawing spells, and 1 Zhengjin sword technique. Xuan had a deeper understanding of the 2 magics. He felt that, if the earth drawing spell was fully activated, it could cause the ground to shake, which would have a considerable attack effect. As for the Zhengjin sword technique, it goes without saying. If he fought with Kunming again, even if he had a protective magic weapon like the Jade card, Xuan would have a great chance of killing him with 1 blow. After absorbing all 10 white light balls, Xuan looked at the courtyard that seemed a little empty and turned away. Arriving at the casual cultivators market, he searched around and found that there were very few stalls selling spirit beast cubs or spirit beast eggs, so he came to a spirit pet shop. In the shop, there were all kinds of spirit beast cubs, flying in the sky, running on the ground, swimming in the water. Everything was available. Most of them were spirit pets, with a well-behaved and docile appearance, and not very aggressive. It was said that the owner was the family of an inner disciple of the 10,000 Beasts sect, and was very proficient in taming beasts. "Excuse me, fellow Taoist, how can I help you?" Seeing Xuan coming in and looking around, a pretty girl came over and greeted him with a smile. "I want to buy 1 or 2 fish spirit beasts. Do you have any recommendations?" Xuan got straight to the point. "If you want to know about fish spirit beasts, you can come over here and take a look. This is a red-bearded carp, a non-ranked demon beast with high ornamental value. It can be cooked after being raised to maturity, and the meat is delicious. The 2 red whiskers next to the fish head can also be used as materials for refining weapons. The red-bearded carp does not have high requirements for the growth environment, and it can be raised with ordinary spiritual springs. Of course, if it can be fed with some spiritual rice, it will be easier to mature. This is a black arrowfish, also an unranked demon beast. It has a body like an arrow, and is extremely fast. It needs to devour a certain amount of blood and flesh essence when it is fed. This is a black water python, a first-rank demon beast, amphibious, extremely aggressive, and with a wide range of changes in size. The longest can reach about 6 feet. As for other aquatic demon beasts, due to their wildness and difficulty in taming, they may hurt their owners, so they are not suitable for you to raise, fellow Taoist. The beautiful female cultivator Xuan introduced several common aquatic spirit beasts in the spirit pet shop, and euphemistically stated that with Xuan's displayed 2nd level key training cultivation, he could only raise demon beasts such as the black water python at most. Xuan thought about it for a while, and ruled out the black arrowfish and the black water python. Raising the black arrowfish requires the essence of blood and flesh. He himself seldom eats a good meal, so how could he have extra blood and flesh of monsters to feed it? As for the black water python, Xuan gave up immediately after hearing that it might be 6 feet long. His own spiritual spring couldn't even hold half of its volume, so what could he use to raise it? And now it is in the experimental stage, and it is not clear whether the white light ball will appear. Therefore, Xuan is more inclined to choose spiritual fish with a short maturation cycle and low price. "How much is this redbeard carp?" He pointed to a carp fry in the pond and asked. The redbeard carp is, as its name suggests, with 2 thin red whiskers growing near its gills, which are longer than its body. When swimming, they are like 2 ribbons, floating back and forth. "For redbeard carp fry, 1 spiritual stone each," the pretty girl replied. "It is also of no rank, and it is more expensive than the spiritual firefly grass spiritual seeds and the eclipse moon tree seedlings." Xuan habitually compared the prices. I'll buy 3. It's cheaper. How about 80 spirit fragments each? He naturally cut the price. If you want to buy 3, I can make the decision and sell it to you at the price of 2 spirit stones and 80 spirit fragments. This is the lowest price. 2 spirit stones and 60 spirit fragments. I'll buy it immediately. 70. It can't be any lower. Okay, deal. Xuan replied with satisfaction. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.